One Piece, A Warlord's Path. Chapter 1-1, Where Am I? A certain Monday, some day, some month New York. Ugh, work, where are you hiding? Mark let out a long, defeated sigh as he stepped out of yet another office building. He looked out at the bustling crowd and endless traffic, feeling utterly drained by life. Wearing an unbranded white long-sleeve shirt, some no-name black skinny jeans, and a pair of discounted 361 degrees sneakers, Mark looked every bit the picture of working-class exhaustion. His entire outfit, including underwear, probably didn't even break $30 and the priciest item? The 361 degrees shoes he'd snagged on special for 12. Over a year out of college and he'd already cycled through more than 10 jobs. Not one lasted more than 3 months. Either the pay was trash, the hours brutal, or the workload was absolutely inhumane. And with his not even 170 cm height, skinny build, and severe nearsightedness, not even construction crews wanted him. Heavy lifting was out. Chill jobs didn't pay. Surviving in a megacity like New York? Practically impossible. Sure, he wasn't hideous or anything, but he wasn't winning any modeling gigs either. No real skills. A diploma from a forgettable college after 3 years of barely coasting. He had a girlfriend once, she dumped him before graduation. The only thing he could remotely brag about was his imagination and halfway decent writing. He'd penned a few low-traffic web novels. That was it. He scratched his head in frustration, fingering the last $110 or so in his pocket. It wasn't even the end of the month yet. There was still about 100 left in his bank account, but that was rent money. And this month had 31 days. Great. Just great. I just wanna go home and cry in peace. He groaned, clutching his head and ruffling his hair like a madman. People on the street gave him weird looks as he trudged toward the subway. 82 cents for a ticket, every coin spent was a silent scream. Once on board and the train started rumbling forward, Mark pulled out his pride and joy, a battered iPhone 5 he'd bought using a mix of private stash and leftover salary. He flicked through his Facebook, nothing interesting. Same with Twitter. Boring. Then. Wait, is that One Piece? Looks like the new episode. I missed it yesterday. The guy next to him, clearly a high school senior in uniform, was watching anime on his phone. Mark scooted closer, eyes lighting up with curiosity. The student glanced at him sideways but didn't say anything. This plot's dragging. But if Luffy and Fujitora throw down, that'd be awesome, the kid muttered. Totally agree. Fujitora's press fruit is insane. If they really fight, he could crush Luffy without even touching him. Wonder how Luffy's gonna counter it. Mark chimed in. Exactly. Zoro already got flattened by Fujitora once, the student nodded, warming up to the conversation. They went back and forth, debating Luffy versus Fujitora with increasing excitement. The chat lifted Mark's spirits after the crap morning he'd had. This was actually fun. About 10 minutes later, Mark got off the train, reluctant to end the convo. His apartment wasn't far from the station, just one street over, a 5-minute walk. He was halfway across the road when he spotted it, something grey with a line of blue shimmering under the sun lying on the ground. A $100 bill? Jackpot. His heart leapt. The last time he'd randomly found money was in high school at an internet cafe, $10, if he remembered right. Blinded by money signs, Mark completely forgot he was in the middle of a busy street. Eyes locked on the prize, an eye-catching $100 bill, he bent down to grab it. Son of a. The second his fingers brushed the rough texture, one word popped into his brain: counterfeit. Wham! Everything blurred. Pain exploded through his body. Then he realized he was flying. And then, blackness. Year 1500 of the sea circle calendar, East Blue, on a deserted island. Under the shade of a palm tree on a lonely beach, a small child in an oversized adult outfit lay motionless on the sand. Cough cough. Suddenly, the child stirred. Eyes fluttered open, and he slowly sat up. A cloudless sky stretched overhead. Waves lapped gently on the shore. For a moment, everything felt dreamlike. He rubbed his eyes. Blinked. What the hell? Where am I? It was Mark. And he was very, very confused. All he'd done was pick up what looked like a fake bill, and now the whole damn map had changed on him. Not that he even realized yet that he'd died in a car accident. He looked down at his tiny, pale hands. His clothes hung off him like bed sheets. And then it hit him. He'd become a kid again. No. This couldn't be real. He rushed to the water's edge and stared at his reflection. Sure enough, the face staring back was his own, just 5 or 6 years old. He felt like crying. He had just become old enough to legally flirt with girls, and now he was back to square one. The universe was playing the cruelest joke. Rolling up his baggy sleeves and pants, Mark waddled barefoot along the beach, dragging his comically oversized sneakers behind him. This environment, this body, shit. Don't tell me this is one of those isekai'd scenarios. He swallowed hard, eyes darting around. To his left, the vast, endless ocean. To his right, jungle. Holy crap, this is terrifying. Not 100 meters from the shoreline, an impossibly dense forest loomed. Towering trees. Jagged peaks. Unfamiliar, alien flora. Mark took several instinctive steps back. Then, one of the massive red flowers easily the size of a bathtub twitched. It unfurled to reveal rows of razor-sharp fangs. In a split second, it snapped shut around a giant toad nearly the size of a wash basin that had just hopped out of the dense underbrush, swallowing it whole. Oh hell no! That's a damn man-eating flower. Mark nearly peed himself. What the actual hell is this place? I'm not even 5 minutes into the jungle and it's already boss-level hostile. The sun was high and blazing, yet he stood there trembling like it was the dead of winter. This is bad. Real bad. I'm a damn 5-year-old in a survival game set on hard mode. How the hell am I supposed to make it through the night? He clutched his oversized sneakers and scanned the horizon again. What is this place? A Western fantasy world? A Xiangxia realm? A TV drama universe? A novel? An anime? T/N, this is a translation from Chinese. All references specific to China including place names, terms, and currency have been removed or adapted for localization. In particular, the currency mentioned in this chapter has been converted to US dollars for clarity. Please note, I'm not familiar with the cost of living or economic conditions in New York, so the dollar amounts reflect a direct conversion rather than real-world accuracy. Not that this mattered in this whole FIC, anyway. System? Supreme Being. Mark had been shouting in his head for ages, but there was nothing, no response, no divine cheat codes. His soft, fair little face darkened, and he let out a string of curses. Damn it! I transmigrated and didn't even get a system. Where's my golden finger? This is bullshit, this is just dog shit. He stood still for a while, but as the heat grew more unbearable by the minute, Mark realized he couldn't stay there any longer. If he kept going without shelter or water, he'd be dehydrated in no time. Without a filtration device, seawater was undrinkable. He had to find some shade. Afraid to venture into the jungle, Mark could only trek along the beach under the merciless sun, step by step. With every step on the hot sand, his tiny footprints stretched out behind him like an endless trail. He had no idea how long he'd been walking, just that the sand was getting hotter and hotter beneath his bare feet. It must have been at least 1 or 2 hours, and he hadn't seen any cliffs or signs of civilization. Just the same endless beach, coconut trees, and a thick, suffocating forest. His iPhone 5, for some reason, had shattered into pieces, so he had no way of telling the time. As for wearing a watch, Mark hadn't had that kind of money. By now, Mark was certain he wasn't on Earth anymore. The evidence was all around: trees with gaping mouths, black serrated flowers, beetles the size of fists, carnivorous rabbits bigger than he was, and enormous birds with wingspans stretching over 10 meters. He even spotted 2 massive beasts locked in battle deep in the jungle. One resembled a tiger. The other, a gorilla. But the tiger was over 7 or 8 meters long, not even counting the tail, and the gorilla wasn't King Kong, but it still stood 2 or 3 stories high and was swinging a massive 4 or 5 meter tree trunk like a club. So really, who knew what they were? He didn't know what kind of world he'd transmigrated into, but ever the optimist, Mark resolved to survive. He felt guilty toward his parents, of course. But at least his annoying little brother was still around to take care of them. He'd have to live on for his parents' sake. For God's sake! Is this a deserted island? Why can't I find a single damn person? Mark licked his cracked lips and wiped the sweat off his forehead before plopping onto the sand. He was exhausted. He didn't know a thing about jungle survival, much less life on a deserted island. And this body, what, 5 or 6 years old? It had already pushed itself to the limit. Any more and he'd do real damage. Maybe even something permanent. He pulled off his long-sleeved shirt and draped it over his head for shade, then slumped against a coconut tree. Smack! Suddenly, Mark slapped his own forehead hard. Damn! I'm really cooked from the heat. How did I not see this sooner? Coconut trees everywhere, massive coconuts everywhere, and I didn't notice a single one. Without hesitation, Mark, nicknamed Monkey by his elementary school teacher for a reason, scrambled up a 6 or 7 meter tree like it was nothing. Once at the top, he wrestled off a huge coconut and gave it a tap. Dang, this thing's hard. How the hell am I supposed to open it? Cradling a coconut bigger than his own head, Mark blinked, thinking hard. His dark eyes suddenly lit up. Wait! I've got it! He reached around behind him. Kid bodies didn't really have waists, and pulled out a keychain. Hee, my little knife. It's your time to shine. Hanging from the keys was a tiny titanium folding knife he'd bought online. The blade was barely 10 centimeters long, cost only $3, with free shipping. It had been his emergency self-defense tool. Coconuts had eyes that were easier to puncture. Mark jabbed one with his knife. Thunk. Didn't open. One more time. Still nothing. Are you messing with me just cause I'm a kid now? My strength's too low. Narrator, let's be honest, were you ever strong? Shut up. Thud, thud, thud. After several angry stabs, Mark finally broke through. Rubbing his reddened hands, he gleefully raised the coconut and began to drink. Far out on the ocean, a black speck appeared but Mark didn't notice. He was too busy sipping away, happy as a clam. The speck grew larger and larger. Huh? What's that? Mark, now ready drathed, finally noticed it. He rubbed his eyes and blinked in surprise. No way. I'm not nearsighted anymore. Back in middle school, reading novels on his phone 24/7 had ruined his eyesight. Glasses were always a pain, they'd fall off in fights, and don't even get him started on kissing his girlfriend. Narrator, don't you mean ex-girlfriend? Shut up. No one asked you. Glasses were such a hassle. Always in the way. Grinning with renewed excitement, Mark looked back out at the sea. The dark shape was much clearer now. Holy crap, it's a ship. Then he squinted. Wait, why does it look so beat up? It was a wooden ship, something straight out of the Age of Sail, and it looked like it had been through hell. Maybe a massive storm? Whatever. Once it gets closer, I'll check it out. He waited. When the ship finally reached the shore, Mark tossed his coconut aside, leapt down from the tree with a whoosh, threw his shirt back over his head, and sprinted toward it. Damn, it's over 100 meters away. Panting and soaked with sweat, Mark finally made it to the vessel. The coconut juice was long gone. Whoa, it's huge. It was a wooden ship, sure, but it was massive. 3 stories tall, at least 50 meters long, and it looked like a good chunk of it was missing. From keel to deck, it rose nearly 5 meters. The prow was shaped like a rhino's head, and the horn had been reinforced with iron, obviously for ramming. This design, it feels familiar. Mark rubbed his smooth, childish chin, took a few steps back, and looked up. There, fluttering from the main mast, was a pirate flag. A skull, framed by the image of a rhino. Holy sh, a pirate ship. Mark nearly burst into tears. Don't tell me. I'm in the One Piece world. A place crawling with monsters who could crush me like a bug. Oh god. I want to go home, and I don't even have a cheat system. Mark forced himself to snap out of it. No matter what, he had to figure out how to survive in this world. Staring at the broken down pirate ship in front of him, Mark began to calculate his next steps. First, I need to check if there's anyone still on board. Then I'll scavenge supplies, flint, food, weapons, clothes. Judging by how wrecked and half-sunk the ship is, it's probably useless for sailing. I'll have to dismantle the wood and use it to build a shelter on land. Gotta pick a solid location. The reason he didn't want to stay on the ship was simple, it was unstable. If a storm or tidal wave hit and dragged the whole wreck away, being on it would be suicide. He circled around the wrecked vessel. The hull stood 4 or 5 meters tall, far too high for him to climb directly. Clutching a small knife, Mark found a gaping hole low on the right hull, maybe a meter above the ground, probably caused by the ship running aground. Seawater was still seeping out of it. If there's anyone inside, I'll kill them. Pirates can't be trusted. That's what he told himself, but as Mark attempted to climb in, he trembled uncontrollably. He failed several times. Splash water sprayed everywhere. Mark tumbled headfirst into the ship. The entire lower level was flooded, nearly a meter deep. He almost choked, but thankfully he knew how to swim. Not an Olympic athlete, sure, but he could manage 20 meters or so. Kicking and paddling with his short arms and legs, Mark made his way through the water. Luckily it was daytime, sunlight streamed through cracks in the hull, allowing him to see. If it had been nighttime, he'd be knocking his head on everything. After swimming about 10 meters, Mark clambered up a flight of stairs, dripping wet. This must be the first basement level. The place I fell in from, that must have been B2. He scanned the area, not a deck, but clearly a storage hold. Scattered everywhere were black cannonballs, rough-cut lumber, iron nails about an inch long, and all kinds of materials. He even spotted a few flintlock pistols, tech that hadn't existed on Earth until the 16th century. But all of it had been soaked by seawater. The cannonballs and pistols were probably useless now. So this is the storeroom. Mark shook his head and crept forward cautiously. The waterlogged planks were slippery, and there were no stairs up from here. After some time, he found a door. On the other side was what looked like a barracks, hammocks and beds scattered everywhere, along with blankets, toothbrushes, towels, shattered mirrors, broken crates, and damaged weapons. The place was a chaotic mess. And then there was the blood. On the blankets, towels, and walls it was everywhere. But there wasn't a single body. Not even a corpse. Mark's scalp prickled. His body, which had finally stopped shaking, started trembling again. Gulp. Mark swallowed hard and picked up a dagger. Given his small frame and limited strength, it was the perfect weapon, compact and easy to handle. Finally, he spotted a staircase. Relief flooded through him. This dark, claustrophobic lower deck was driving him insane. God, that was terrifying. I'm just a shut-in nerd, man. Do I really deserve this? Thud thud thud, he scrambled up the stairs as fast as his short legs could carry him. Phew. I thought I was gonna die. Sunlight. Yes. Reaching the deck and seeing the blazing sun overhead, Mark sighed with relief. The oppressive darkness below had nearly broken him. If not for the shafts of light from above, he really would have felt like a prisoner. Light. Light was salvation. From his vantage point on the deck, Mark surveyed his surroundings. The mess continued here, scratched up surfaces, bullet holes, shattered wood everywhere. The aftermath of a fierce battle, judging by the volume of dried blood far more than below. What stood out most was the mainmast, over a meter thick and clad in iron. Dozens of deep gashes covered it, from slashes and bullet impacts. The worst of them looked like it had been struck by an axe, the chunk taken out at least a third of the way through. On a ship like this, especially in naval combat, the mainmast is vital. Lose that, and you're dead in the water. That it took this much damage, this fight must have been brutal. What the hell happened here? Judging by the damage, it was an all-out war, but where are the bodies? Even the mast got wrecked this badly. Mark frowned, deeply puzzled. I need to find the captain's quarters. Maybe there's a journal inside that explains what went down. He pushed his questions aside and started searching for the captain's room. Suddenly, at the entrance to one of the rooms, something caught his eye. Is that a severed hand? Ugh, gross. A bloated, pale hand floated in a puddle, its skin sickly from waterlogging, a gold ring still on one finger. The sight made Mark gag. Damn, movies really don't do this justice. This is straight up nauseating. No, I have to get used to this. No matter what world I'm in, most pirates are violent scum. And this island, whatever's happening here, it's dangerous. Whether or not this is the world of One Piece, I need to adapt. I have to adapt. He turned his head away and muttered repeatedly, then suddenly spun back to face the hand staring it down as if to steel himself. Barely 3 seconds passed. Blah. Mark turned away and vomited. Having eaten nothing, all that came up was stomach acid. He dry heaved for a while. When nothing more would come out, he wiped his mouth, straightened up, and turned his attention away from the gruesome hand. He looked into the room. The door had been shattered inward by some heavy force, fragments strewn all over the floor. Inside was a relatively tidy space, oddly untouched compared to the rest of the ship. His gut told him this was it. This had to be the captain's cabin. Without hesitation, Mark stepped inside, his stubby legs carrying him across the spacious room, easily 80 square meters. There was a large bed, an armchair, a bookshelf, a desk, and a mirror. The bookshelf had taken the worst of the damage, split into 3 pieces by some bladed weapon. Torn pages littered the floor. Ignoring the paper mess, Mark made straight for the desk. Scattered across it were a lamp, a few books, a map, a quill, and most important, a black leather-bound notebook. There it is. This has to be it, he said, standing on his toes to grab the book. Just as he was about to open it, a terrible thought struck him. Wait a sec. Can I even read the language of this world? Whatever. Doesn't matter. I'll give it a shot anyway. He shook his head and opened the journal. A moment later, his eyes went wide. No way, this is Japanese. He was stunned. The language confirmed what he'd started to suspect. Luckily for him, Mark could read Japanese. Back in high school, he and his buddies used to watch Japanese adult films together, ones without subtitles. Most of the ones with subtitles were translated horribly, which drove him crazy. That frustration sparked a resolve. I swear I'll learn Japanese, no matter what. In the end, despite years of Mandarin classes, Mark's Mandarin vocabulary barely cracked 20 words. But Japanese? In less than a year and a half, he'd mastered it. His friends practically worshipped him for it. So now, he stared at the captain's journal, ready to uncover the truth. See Circle Calendar 1491, April 7th, clear skies. I'm setting sail tomorrow. But today, something strange happened. I found a weird fruit by the shore. It looked amazing, but tasted horrible. Still, the moment I ate it, I turned into a rhinoceros. Ha ha ha. So this is one of the legendary treasures of the sea, the devil fruits. The sea smiles upon me. I'll conquer it for sure. See Circle Calendar 1491, April 8th, clear skies. Today marks the start of my journey. I, Borutori, have officially set out to sea, along with 7 of my brothers. Together, we are the Black Rhino Pirates. Captain Borutori. Devil Fruit User. Black Rhino Pirates. Mark silently nodded to himself as he read. So it was the world of the Pirate King. He turned the page. See Circle Calendar 1491, April 15th, overcast. Landed on an island today. Picked up 3 gunners, a cook and 2 shipwrights. Our crew's growing fast, and their skills are decent. We even added 2 cannons to the ship. Good timing, 2 sank a navy vessel this afternoon. See Circle Calendar 1491, May 4th, clear skies. The crew's 21 strong now. Got into a brawl with the beaver pirates yesterday. Wiped them out completely. Only poor pal got shot once, tough luck. See Circle Calendar 1491, June 16th, torrential rain. Damn it! We were ambushed by the navy in Logue Town. Escaped in the pouring rain, but lost 3 brothers. We recruited 5 new ones afterward, but still, it stings. See Circle Calendar 1491, June 23rd, light rain. Weather's great today, and we've arrived at Reverse Mountain. What a sight! I'm crossing it today. This is the start of my domination over the seas. See Circle Calendar 1491, August 5th, overcast. Damn it, the Grand Line is brutal. The Navy's gotten way stronger. We got surrounded by several warships. One of them had a Marine Headquarters Rear Admiral on board. He could walk in the air. What the hell kind of monster is he? See Circle Calendar 1491, August 23rd, hailstorm. We escaped, but the price was steep. Only 11 of us left now. Worst part? We're completely lost. See Circle Calendar 1492, February 11th, clear skies. Haha. This new ship's amazing. We've finally made it to the isekai'd archipelago. And me with a bounty of 100 million berries, turns out I'm the top dog here. What a rush. See Circle Calendar 1492, February 15th, clear skies. We've had our fun on isekai'd. The ship's been coated. Time to head to the second half of the Grand Line, the New World. See Circle Calendar 1492, August 30th, thunderstorm. Damn Roger. Damn really. I swear, I'll kill them both. See Circle Calendar 1493, January 10th, heavy rain. The New World is packed with monsters, but I'm no slouch either. Snatched a few islands. Gotta build up strength. My next target, that bastard Golden Lion Shiki. See Circle Calendar 1495, July 8th, heavy rain. Ha 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 ha. I'm over the moon. Shiki and Roger clashed at Ed War. Pity they both survived, but most of Shiki's fleet ended up at the bottom of the sea. Shiki, I'm coming for you. I'm Black Rhino Tori, with a bounty of 550 million berries. See Circle Calendar 1495, October 14th, clear skies. Damn it! That bastard Shiki is stronger than I thought. I couldn't beat him. I need to regroup and rebuild. See Circle Calendar 1496, February 19th, heavy rain. Heard Rogers returned to the first half of the Grand Line. What's he planning? Has Garp started hunting him yet? See Circle Calendar 1499, July 28th, heavy rain. Roger actually conquered the Grand Line. He made it to Laugh Tale. Damn him! He's conquered the sea. He's the Pirate King. See Circle Calendar 1500, April 15th, clear skies. Roger turned himself in. What the hell? I haven't even had my revenge yet. See Circle Calendar 1500, May 7th, light rain. Roger is dead. The One Piece lies on Laugh Tale. Shiki went on a rampage at Marineford, only to be taken down by Garp and Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Thrown into Impel Down. What a dreamlike year. But I've made my decision. I'll challenge Whitebeard. See Circle Calendar 1500, June 1st, overcast. Whitebeard. That monster is terrifying. I was crushed. My fleet nearly wiped out. I fled like a beaten dog. See Circle Calendar 1500, July 23rd, light rain. Barely escaped to the first half of the Grand Line. But this place is crawling with Marines. Garp is chasing me down. See Circle Calendar 1500, August 7th, clear skies. A storm saved us. After a grueling battle, fewer than 50 of us are left. We made it back to the East Blue, but food's nearly gone. I found another devil fruit, but it's useless to me now. Locked it away in a box. See Circle Calendar 1500, August 9th, overcast. Garp's still after me. I'm disbanding the Black Rhino pirates. They'll scatter in small boats, and I'll face Garp alone. If I die, so be it, but I'll never rot and impel down. There was nothing more. Mark flipped through the thick journal, finishing the story of Black Rhino Borer Tori. The log revealed so much. The legendary Ed War where Shiki was crushed by Roger. Roger reaching laugh tail, claiming the title of Pirate King, then surrendering and being executed by the Marines in Logue Town. Shiki's rampage at Marineford, ending with his capture by Garp and Sengoku, and his imprisonment in Impel Down. From this, Mark could piece it together. The current year was still C Circle Calendar 1500. The Pirate King Gold Roger had just died, likely before August. The bloodstains in the log made it clear Borutori was already dead, and his ship was in ruins. Which meant, there were still 22 years before Monkey D. Luffy set sail. Chapter 5-5, Devil Fruit. So, now that red-haired Shanks has officially set sail, what the hell am I supposed to do? Mark muttered, frowning. Now fully convinced he had landed in the world of One Piece, Mark couldn't help but feel a wave of anxiety. In this world of monsters and legends, he too wanted to sail the seas like Gold Roger, Edward Newgate, and Monkey D. Luffy wielding incredible power and forging a name that would shake the Grand Line. But here he was, no teacher, stuck on a deserted island, and worst of all, no devil fruit to speak of. Wait a second. A devil fruit. A sudden realization struck him like lightning. He flipped open the worn notebook he'd been poring over. There it was written plain as day. His heart nearly jumped out of his chest. A devil fruit. Worth over 100 million berries on the black market. A mysterious treasure of the sea that could grant its user supernatural powers, real powers. And right now, it was the one thing Mark wanted more than anything, something he could only dream of. Devil fruits were said to be the incarnations of sea devils. Consuming one granted a unique ability, but at the cost of losing the ability to swim. The ocean would reject you forever. That's why people called them the sea devil's curse. Still, oh, you cursed fruit, hurry up and let me devour you. Mark was trembling not with fear, but with excitement. The notebook says Borutori of the Black Rhino Pirates picked one up when he fled back to the East Blue. Thought it was useless, so he locked it away in a box. Mark reread the line, eyes wide as he confirmed the details again. If no one had taken the fruit when the rest of the Black Rhino Pirates fled, then, it had to still be here. Maybe just maybe it was in this very room. The captain's quarters. He slowly turned his head, scanning the room in disbelief. Okay, calm down, no need to rush. I'll find it. One thing at a time, he told himself, trying to steady his racing heart. He opened the drawer of the desk. A key. He took it. Moved on. He opened the wardrobe, just some clothes. Still nothing. Checked the bed, a sturdy single one made by Sakura wood, still no luck. What about under the bed, he muttered, scratching his head before hopping down and flipping up the sheets. There it was, a small metal box wrapped in iron plating, with a tiny ornate brass lock. Ha! Found it! Mark's pale face flushed red with excitement. His grin stretched wide as he held back a shout of joy. Superpowers! Superpowers! He whistled as he pulled the box out from under the bed. Man, this thing's heavy. This lock. Mark squinted, frowning at the box. Wait, that key from the desk. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the brass key, sliding it into the lock and giving it a twist. Click. It opened. I knew it. Haha. Who's the man now, he said smugly, puffing out his chest. Just as he was about to flip open the lid, he stopped, swallowed hard. Wait, let me think. Gulp. Devil fruits come in 3 types, Paramecia, Logia, and Zoan. If it's a Logia, that'd be amazing. Paramecia's not bad either, unless it's one of those totally useless ones. And Zoan, ugh, too ugly unless it's a mythical Zoan. Drooling a bit, Mark slowly lifted the lid. Inside lay a strange pale purple fruit, covered in circular spiral patterns, shaped somewhat like a pineapple. Haha! A devil fruit, he burst out laughing, his childish voice echoing through the dilapidated pirate ship. He reached in well, used both hands and carefully picked it up, examining it from every angle. What kind of fruit is this? I don't recognize it. What if it's a Zoan type? That'd suck. But hey, they say there's no such thing as a useless power. Only useless users. Me? I'm a proud youth from a modern world. Developing powers? Please, that's child's play. Give some trash tier dude Whitebeard's tremor fruit and he'll probably just turn it into a vibrating back massager. Whatever. No turning back now. Time to see if I've drawn a dragon or a worm. He pulled out his knife and peeled back the skin. Those swirling purple spirals gave way to pure white flesh underneath, also laced with faint spiral marks. He looked like a martyr about to charge into enemy fire, eyes closed tight, and then... chomp! As if biting into a mortal enemy, Mark took a huge bite. Instantly, his eyes bulged. His face turned red. Then, grimacing hard, he forced down the rest of the fruit in 3 more bites. Blah! He bent over, gagging violently. Goddamn, that's disgusting. I've never eaten anything this vile. No wonder even Luffy said it was worse than crap. I've never eaten crap, but if this fruit's any indication, it probably tastes about the same. After dry heaving for a solid minute, he finally caught his breath. Tea, that was awful. He whimpered, wiping his mouth. But then the rush hit him. The excitement of gaining a superpower overwhelmed the nausea. Let's see what I got. He stretched his arms. Legs. No transformation, so not Zoan. Phew. Poked himself. No elemental dispersion. Not Logia either. Dang, a little disappointing. Paramecia, then. But unlike Luffy or Buggy, his body didn't seem changed, more like there was a power stirring inside him. Something like the tremor fruit, or the float fruit, or maybe even the string or bomb types. He raised one little hand, pressed it gently against the desk, then focused. Crack. The desk trembled. When he pulled his hand away, a thin fracture had split the surface clean down the middle. Ha 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 ha. This power, this is awesome. Mark beamed, staring at the crack, then at his small pale hand, giddy with triumph. Getting a devil fruit this easily, on my first day after transmigrating, this has to be my cheat code, right? Deep within the island's heart, ancient trees towered overhead, some so colossal it was impossible to tell if they'd been growing for centuries or millennia. Their canopies blanketed the sky, casting the forest in perpetual twilight. Beneath their shadowed limbs, wild undergrowth flourished, thorns sprawled like brambles of wire, and dead leaves blanketed the ground. Old vines and weeds coiled across the forest floor so thickly that even a venomous snake, or a massive python, could hide in wait, undetected. The air was thick, damp, sweltering. Towering trees locked out the sun. Ferocious beasts prowled the underbrush. Strange flora sprung from every corner, each more bizarre than the last. Boom! Without warning, a visible shockwave of air exploded outward. A translucent burst of pale white force roared through the forest, toppling massive trees in its wake. Dust surged like storm clouds, and a trench deep and jagged ripped across the ground for over 10 meters. At the end of that trench stood a hulking black beast, at least as tall as a 3-story building. 4 limbs, jet black fur, a savage expression, and a mouth full of fangs. It resembled a gorilla, though grotesquely scaled up. Or, perhaps a Kong. But this so-called Kong was soaked in blood, its body carved open by deep, gaping wounds. Any ordinary beast would have collapsed long ago from such injuries, if not dead, then clinging desperately to life. But this one? Rah! The Kong let out a deafening roar, forcing itself upright. Yet it didn't charge. It hesitated, eyes locked forward, warily fixated on something unseen. Click! Click! Footsteps echoed from the forest. A small figure slowly emerged from the shadows. A barefoot boy, no taller than 165 centimeters, lean and wiry, dark-skinned, not much to look at. No striking features. Nothing particularly handsome. Just ordinary. But his grin was wide, his eyes sharp and full of sunlit mischief. He wore a sleeveless outfit made from beast pelts. The boy squinted at the beast, flashing a toothy grin. Hey, big guy! You've slipped away from me way too many times. Let's see you run now. The Kong likely didn't understand his words, but instinct screamed danger. This human was not to be taken lightly. Roar! It thundered forward, each step shaking the ground. As it charged, it snatched up a massive broken tree limb 2 meters long, nearly a meter thick, and hurled it with terrifying force. The giant log ripped through the air, howling with the wind. Still that strong, huh? Soru! Whoosh! The boy vanished. The log smashed into the earth with earth-shaking weight, gouging out a crater on impact. Wood splintered into fragments, scattering like shrapnel. That's right. What the boy used was none other than Soru, one of the Rokushiki techniques from the Navy. By stamping the ground 10 or more times in a fraction of a second, he used the recoil to launch himself at explosive speed. The Kong panicked, its eyes darting in all directions. Secret technique, divine spiral. A voice rang out beneath it. In a blink, the boy reappeared right under the beast. He clenched his fists, left over right, palms inward, and drove them upward into the creature's gut. Wham! Before the Kong could even react, its massive stomach caved in around the blow's impact point. The surrounding air rippled like a bomb had gone off. A beast the size of a building was sent flying. It soared through the air, smashed through 4 or 5 ancient trees, then slammed into the ground, rolling across earth and foliage alike. It tumbled for nearly 20 meters before finally lying still. No visible wounds. But inside, its organs had been turned to pulp. Huff, huff. The boy caught his breath, wiping sweat from his brow. Staring at the motionless body, he grinned wide. Ha ha. Nailed it. A full-fledged secret technique man, I'm a genius. Still beaming, he dragged the corpse away. That night, the moon hung high above a seaside cliff. At the cliff's edge stood a wooden cabin. The boy had already skinned the beast and butchered its carcass, hanging the cleaned remains on racks outside. Thick slabs of golden brown meat sizzled over an open flame, filling the air with mouth-watering aroma. Today marks the 10th year since I came to this world, he said, stepping inside and pulling out a wooden barrel. As he opened the lid, the scent of aged liquor wafted out. He took a deep breath, blissful. Definitely a day worth celebrating. He raised the barrel and drank straight from it. This boy was Mark, the same youth from 10 years ago. After eating a devil fruit, Mark had chosen this remote cliffside to develop his powers. Bit by bit, he'd hauled salvaged supplies from the ship to build a life here. Food had been scarce. But one stroke of luck was the 5 barrels of fine liquor hidden in the captain's cabin. With the one in hand, only one remained. Alongside it were a few serviceable blades, axes, and a single intact flintlock pistol, with fewer than 20 bullets. But for young, powerless Mark back then, it was enough to survive. Using timber from the wrecked ship, he slowly constructed this wooden cabin. And from then on every day he trained without fail. He knew all too well, devil fruit powers consumed stamina. Without a strong body, he was doomed. Take Borer Tori, captain of the Black Rhino Pirates, a Zoan-type user of the Ox fruit, Rhino model. He mastered all 3 forms of Haki observation, armament, and conquerors and had awakened his fruit. That was why he could stand toe-to-toe with the likes of Whitebeard and Golden Lion, even escape from them repeatedly. A force strong enough to be hunted by someone like Garp. He wasn't inferior to the later warlords like Don Quixote da Flamingo. Fortunately, Tori's journals had survived. They contained invaluable notes on developing devil fruit powers, combat training, and the Rokushiki techniques, specifically Soru, Jeppo, and Rankyaku, along with Haki cultivation methods. While much of the devil fruit advice didn't apply, Tori's was Zoan, Mark's was Paramecia, the rest proved priceless. 10 years of relentless training had made Mark more than human. On Earth, he'd be called a Superman. Combined with his powers, he was strong. At the very least, not any weaker than Luffy when he first set out to sea. Of the Rokushiki trio, Soru and Rankyaku were now second nature. Jeppo, though? Still shaky, he could barely stay airborne for 5 meters. As for Haki, Mark trained barefoot to attune himself to observation Haki, sensing shifts in the ground and his surroundings. His range? Roughly 100 meters. But armament Haki? Cough, not even close, he'd admit. Not even at the starting point he hadn't managed to activate it at all. To strengthen his body, experiment with his devil fruit, and gain real combat experience, Mark made it a daily routine to plunge into the jungle and forests, seeking out massive, ferocious beasts to fight. Even after 10 years, he still hadn't fully explored the island. It was just too dangerous. The jungle was teeming with monstrous threats, serpents stretching dozens of meters, beasts as large and fearsome as ancient monsters, even man-eating trees that moved on their own and hunted living prey. It was terrifying. Sure, Mark had taken down this particular Kong gorilla with ease, but he wasn't deluded. Deep in the forest, there were still creatures so massive and mysterious that he didn't stand a chance against them. Some of them could crush him like a bug. The East Blue was known as the weakest of the 4 seas, and yet this island held beasts that would give the Grand Line a run for its money. That probably explained why it remained uninhabited. Who in their right mind would live here? Still, Mark felt incredibly grateful to Borer Tori of the Black Rhino Pirates for the devil fruit he'd stumbled upon, because it was a powerful one. Paramecia type, impact fruit. It allowed him to generate and manipulate concussive force, amplifying his punches and kicks with explosive power. He could launch shockwaves into the air, or even compress the atmosphere into dense pockets of air that hit like bricks or cannonballs. It was an immensely powerful fruit. What is concussive force? It's the sudden force generated when 2 objects collide, building rapidly and disappearing in a blink. It's the same kind of power behind punches, sprints, or even meteor strikes. That's impact. And how far a user could go with it? That depended entirely on how far they were willing to push their abilities. Honestly, it had way more development potential than most Logia-type fruits. Sure, the Logias were busted in their own right. Think laser beams, molten magma, and freezing ice. You unlock those, and you're instantly stronger than 99% of people on the seas. As long as you didn't run into a natural counter, you were basically unkillable. But even Sakazuki, an admiral and magma-wielding monster, got manhandled by Whitebeard. Just one punch sent him crashing into the earth. The only reason he survived was thanks to his monstrous physique and his Logia intangibility, which let him tank most of the damage. Anyone else? Dead or broken. But with top-tier Paramecia fruits? The ceiling was even higher. Take Whitebeard's Tremor fruit. Its raw power was world-ending. And Mark's impact fruit, if developed fully, who was to say it couldn't reach that level? That night passed without incident, just the distant howls of predators hunting in the jungle. After a wild night of training and a whole barrel of booze, Mark passed out cold. Good thing he'd already beaten or scared off every beast in a 10-mile radius. Otherwise, if a monster had stumbled in and swallowed him whole in his sleep, man, what a tragic way for a transmigrated soul to go. And just like that, the most unlucky isekai'd protagonist dies. The end. Cough, just kidding. Morning. The sun blazed overhead. Still half asleep, Mark rolled over and blinked his eyes open. Man, that was a good sleep, he muttered groggily, stretching out his limbs before slowly getting to his feet. A new day, the start of the new year. He hummed half-heartedly as he squatted by the cliffside to wash up, lazily gazing out over the sea, hoping just maybe to spot a passing ship. It was a habit he'd built over the past 10 years, every morning, brushing his teeth on the cliff and scanning the ocean. Suddenly, his entire body jolted. Eyes wide, he rubbed the sleep out of his eyes and stared hard at the horizon. Then he practically screamed, "Holy crap, is that a ship?" Sure enough, just about a nautical mile off the coast, a massive ship striped in red and blue was cruising along the waves. And at the top of its mainmast, the flag it flew didn't bear a skull and crossbones but a blazing red clover symbol. Not a pirate ship. Thank God it's not a pirate ship. Mark nearly fainted from joy. It wasn't the first time he'd seen ships in these 10 years, once 7 years ago, and again 5 years back. But both had flown the Jolly Roger, and back then he'd been too weak to risk calling out. Who knew what kind of pirates they were? Maybe they'd kill him just for fun. Hey! Over here! Help! Somebody! He tossed aside his toothbrush stick and beast bone cup and started jumping, waving frantically toward the distant vessel. To make sure they saw him, Mark quickly gathered dry wood and straw, throwing together a makeshift bonfire and striking a flint to light it. The flames roared to life, and thick black smoke rose into the sky. Aboard the Zhizhiriel, a young sailor in a blue seaman's uniform spotted the plume of smoke rising from the infamous and feared Kuko's Island of the East Blue. His sharp eyes made out a figure waving on a cliffside near the source of the fire. He could even faintly hear shouting. "Captain! Captain!" the sailor called, racing to the captain's quarters on the second deck. "What is it, Dimitri?" "Slow down," came the reply, as the door opened to reveal Girly Jaren, a 40-year-old captain clutching a half-empty bottle. "Captain, there's someone calling for help from Kuko's Island." "What?" Girly Jaren blinked in disbelief, pushing past Dimitri and rushing to the main deck. Several other sailors gathered as well. "There, Captain!" Dimitri pointed out toward the island. The captain pulled out his spyglass and focused in. There on a clifftop was a young man in furs, waving like crazy beside a blazing signal fire. "What should we do, Captain?" Dimitri asked nervously after a long pause. "Drop anchor," Girly Jaren ordered. "Dimitri, grab 2 men and ready the lifeboat. We're picking him up." "I'm in." "Me too." Soon enough, Dimitri and 2 other young sailors were below deck, preparing the lifeboat. The Zhizhiriel came to a halt, and the rescue boat was lowered. "Yes. I'm saved!" Mark shouted as he saw the lifeboat headed his way. He ran back to his hut, hurriedly packed his belongings into a huge beast hide bag, and sprinted for the beach. Laughing, arms wide, he cried out. "Ha ha ha! The open sea, here I come! Ha ha, thanks a bunch, Captain, and everyone else too, I really appreciate it." Mark grinned broadly as he stood on the deck of the large ship, bowing slightly in gratitude. "No need to thank us, really, it was nothing." The burly captain waved it off casually, sloshing the bottle of booze in his hand. "Name's Girly Jaren, captain of the Zhizhiriel. And you, kid? What's your name? How old are you? What were you doing on Kuko's Island of all places? That's one of the most terrifying islands in all of the East Blue. Even the cockiest pirates steer clear of it. We only ended up there because a storm threw us off course 2 days ago." "Oh, so that scary place is called Kuko's Island." Mark scratched his head, face falling into a pained expression. "I'm Chris T. Aridar, 16. As for how I ended up there, well, that's a long story. It was a tragic tale, and just thinking about it made Aridar tear up all over again. How was he supposed to know how he got there? If he'd had a choice, he wouldn't have stayed on that godforsaken island for 10 whole years. Well, Aridar, no need to talk about painful memories." Captain Girly Jaren, seeing the boy on the verge of tears, tactfully changed the subject. Of course, part of the reason Girly Jaren had so readily allowed Aridar aboard was because no pirate crew in their right mind would hide out on a death trap like Kuko's Island. Not in the East Blue, anyway. No pirate worth their salt or that foolish would risk an ambush there. And besides, the Zhizhiriel never would have neared the island if that storm hadn't blown them off course. What's more, Jaren had a sharp eye, honed from years of travel. One look at Aridar's beast hide clothes, the bones and fangs adorning his gear, and the heavy bundle slung across his back, and he could tell this kid was no weakling. If trouble showed up on their voyage, and they ended up in a pirate skirmish, someone like Aridar would definitely return the favor for saving him. Jaren was confident in his own strength too. If he ever did go pirate, his bounty wouldn't be anything less than 10 million berries. Seeing that the towering captain wasn't digging deeper, Aridar let out a quiet sigh of relief. If Jaren had kept asking, he'd have had to make up an even bigger story. What was he supposed to say? I'm actually from another world, and you're all characters from a manga where I come from. As for the name Chris T. Eridar, he'd had that ready for a long time. Now that he had a second life in this world, it only felt right to leave his old identity behind. A new name for a new beginning. The name came from the protagonist of a Western fantasy novel he'd written back in college, one that had totally flopped. The original name was Eridar Chris, but since names in the One Piece world followed the Eastern order, surname first, given name second, he'd flipped it. As for the T in the middle, honestly, it didn't mean anything. Luffy and others had hidden D initials, right? So Eridar figured, why not pick a letter too? Why the letter T? Totally random. Totally random. Totally random. Important things deserve to be said 3 times, it meant absolutely nothing. Just a fluke of a pick. Note, from this point forward, the main character will be referred to as Chris T. Eridar, not Mark. So, where are you headed next? Girly Jaren took a swig of his drink, raising an eyebrow. If it's not too much trouble, just drop me off at the next island with people. Eridar thought it over. With nowhere in particular to go in this world, any island with civilization would do. Sounds good. Next stop's an inhabited one anyway. Dimitri, show Eridar to one of the spare cabins. The towering captain clapped a firm hand on Eridar's shoulder and called out, it'll be 3 days before we reach Passer Island. Get some rest in the meantime, I'll call you when we get there. Much appreciated. Nodding, Eridar followed Dimitri up to the second deck. Hey, bro, you're seriously cool, said Dimitri, a cheerful young man who slung an arm around Eridar's shoulder like they were already best friends. You actually survived on Kuko's island? Dude, look at that outfit. Real beast hide, right? That's gotta be from some crazy predator. Looks better than the snow bear pelts we haul in for luxury coats. Though technically over 30 in mental age, Eridar had been stuck on Kuko's island for 10 years after transmigrating, his body frozen in a teenager's prime. And since all he did during that time was train, refine his devil fruit powers, and survive, his emotional age hadn't advanced much. So when he saw Dimitri admiring his gear with such starry eyes, his vanity swelled like a balloon. Grinning, he tugged at his beast-hide tunic and said proudly, of course it is. This came from a saber-toothed tiger, 7 or 8 meters long. Whoa! 7 or 8 meters? That thing must have been terrifying. Sure was, Eridar said smugly. Took me half a day to take it down. He reached to his belt, pulled out a sleek, 1-foot-long dagger, and handed it to Dimitri. By the way, I heard them say you were the one who spotted me first. Thanks for that. This here's made from that saber-tooth's fang, razor sharp, tough as steel. I want you to have it. For me. Dimitri's eyes went wide. As a regular sailor, he never expected to be gifted something so valuable. He wasn't a fighter, but he had a good eye from transporting high-end goods. The dagger was smooth as jade, a little rough around the edges, sure, but its edge was clean and its build solid. A blade made from one of Kuko's island's apex predators? Worth a small fortune on the black market. Of course. I carved it myself. It's a bit rough, but I hope you don't mind. Before Dimitri could even protest, Eridar stuffed the fang dagger into his hands. Not at all. Thank you so much, this is the best gift I've ever gotten. Dimitri clutched the dagger with stars in his eyes, turning it over in admiration. Haha, don't be like that. We're friends now, aren't we? Eridar slung an arm over his shoulder with a big grin. We sure are. Dimitri laughed, his joy as infectious as his grin. By afternoon, the Zhizhiriel had completely sailed beyond the waters of Kuko's island. The weather was clear and the winds were favorable, smooth sailing all the way. Hey Captain Jaren, I heard from Dimitri that your ship is a merchant vessel. You guys deal in things like fur coats, rare minerals, local specialties, that kind of stuff, right? Eridar stood on the deck, lugging his oversized bundle over his shoulder. That's right. Why? Looking to sell something. Captain Jaren leaned lazily against the railing, casually glancing at the large hide-wrapped pack by Eridar's side. He already knew Eridar had gifted Dimitri a dagger crafted from the fang of a saber-toothed tiger, and he also knew that a bestial fang dagger from Kuko's island could fetch quite a price. Of course. If I want to travel to any populated island, I'll need money. And I'm broke, but I've got some goods. Eridar, possessing observation haki, was fully aware that Captain Jaren had been eyeing his bundle, but he didn't mind. In fact, he directly opened it. I've got 3 full hides from beasts over 8 meters in length, and 5 daggers and short blades made from beast fangs and bones. He pulled out a roughly 60-centimeter long short blade, its sheath wrapped in black animal hide, the blade itself a dusky green made from bone. He smiled and added, this one's for you. Thanks for saving me. It's made from the scythe arm of a 2-meter-tall scythe mantis. Razor sharp. Heh, well, I won't say no to that. Jaren had already been envious of Dimitri's saber-toothed dagger, but hadn't had the face to ask for one himself. Now, looking at the ruggedly crafted bone blade in Eridar's hand, he was clearly delighted. Since it was a gift, he accepted it without hesitation. Drawing it from its sheath, he admired the bone's green sheen roughly forged, but beautiful in its own wild way. Nice blade. Ehehe, glad you like it. Eridar beamed as he watched Jaren's eyes light up. Of course I do. Your beast hides and blades, these are top grade. Durable enough to be worn as armor. Jaren inspected the blade briefly, then slid it into his belt. Picking up a pure black pelt, he gave it a strong tug. Nodding in approval, he said, excellent quality. And since they're all from Kuko's island, I'll give you 200,000 berries for the lot. That much? Thanks. Eridar was genuinely surprised. He hadn't expected such a high price and said cheerfully, there are also some fang trinkets in here, consider them gifts for the crew. Thanks for looking after me. Haha, much appreciated. I'll pass them out to the boys. Jaren, standing nearly 2 meters tall, pulled out a fang bracelet and gave Eridar a hearty slap on the shoulder. Whistling, Eridar made his way back to his room with his new earnings. Meanwhile, Jaren stood on deck, watching the young man's retreating figure. His hand rested fondly on the bone blade at his waist. Ha, what an interesting kid, he chuckled. The next morning. The sun was blazing, and by 10 a.m., the heat was already strong enough to give an average person heat stroke. Hey, Dimitri, you got a dream? Eridar asked, nudging Dimitri as they lounged in a shady spot. A dream? Dimitri blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. If you don't have a dream, how are you different from a dried-up salted fish? Eridar muttered, fanning himself. Ugh, even the breeze is hot. After thinking a moment, Dimitri answered seriously, I want to be a navigator. A top-class one. My dad used to be a navigator, not a great one, but he always dreamed of becoming a real pro. A navigator, huh? Not bad. Eridar smiled, then suddenly turned to face him, eyes bright. Then, Dimitri, why don't you become the navigator on my ship? Your ship? Dimitri looked stunned. Yup. I'll be of age in 2 years. Then I'll spend 2 more years building a ship and gathering a crew. On my 20th birthday, I'll set sail for the Grand Line. Eridar stared out at the open sea, clenching his fists. Wait, you're setting out to sea? To the Grand Line? That place is insane. Dimitri jumped to his feet in shock. Wait, are you saying, you want to be a pirate? You're chasing after Gold Roger's treasure, the One Piece. No. I'm not after the One Piece. Eridar shook his head and gestured for Dimitri to sit back down. I've got my own dream. So, will you come with me? You'd really want me? I barely know anything about navigation. Dimitri sat down again, voice full of doubt. Who cares? You've still got 4 years to learn. Eridar wiped sweat from his brow, then stood up, waving as he walked away. Think it over. Tell me when I disembark. With that, he turned and headed up to his room on the 2nd floor, leaving Dimitri deep in thought. Whoa! Just as Eridar reached the stairs, an urgent horn blared from the lookout atop the mainmast. That's... Eridar had never heard the ship's alarm before, but he could tell from the rapid blasts that something bad was happening. Pirates? Is it pirates? Shit, are we under attack? The sound of the alarm was like oil hitting an open flame. The Zhizhiriel exploded into chaos. Crew members dashed about, some rushed for weapons, others prepared cannons, and many scrambled up to the lookout posts. The Zhizhiriel was a large merchant ship, roughly 150 meters from bow to stern, with 2 levels above deck and 2 below. With over 300 crew members aboard, the ship was heavily armed due to the surge in piracy triggered by the start of the Great Pirate Era, thanks to Gold Roger. Most crew carried weapons, and the ship was outfitted with rifles, cannons, everything needed to blow away small to mid-sized pirate crews. Don't panic. Captain Jaren strode onto the deck, his voice loud and commanding. First mate, take 50 men and man the deck cannons. Blast those bastards to hell. Second mate, take another 50 below deck, grab more weapons and ammo, and watch for hull breaches. Be careful. Third mate, take 50 and prep for close combat. Do not let them board. The rest of you, grab your gear and get ready to fight. Got it. I'll blast 'em all to hell, roared the burly first mate Hellery, stripping the covers off the cannons and adjusting their aim. Understood. On it, said the usually quiet second mate Ao, leading his team below with heavy footsteps. Leave it to me. The third mate, Malok, licked his dry lips as he hoisted a rocket launcher, a faint glint of bloodlust in his eyes. Chapter 10-10, Naval Battle. Roughly 3 to 4 nautical miles from the Zhizhiriel, 3 pirate ships flying skull and crossbones flags were charging across the waves at full speed. Move it, boys. That's a ship from the Red Clover Merchant Guild, take it, roared a grotesque pirate, over 2 meters tall and covered in rolls of fat. Standing at the prow of the largest of the three ships, he swung a massive spiked club nearly as long as he was tall, bellowing at the bloodthirsty crew around him. "Aye, Captain Brew," came the chorus of gleeful, twisted pirates, each one dressed like a reject from a gothic fashion show, their faces alight with cruel excitement as they brandished swords and spears. Back on the Zhizhiriel, Captain Jaren stood at the bow, one hand resting on the hilt of his longsword. "Did you get a look at their flag? Which crew is it?" he asked a nearby crewman. "It's the Brew pirates," the sailor replied, trembling as he peered through his spyglass. Two crossed spiked clubs beneath a skull. "That's Headbuster Brew, he's got a bounty of 16 million berries." "Headbuster Brew, bounty 16 million. Captain Jaren rubbed the bridge of his nose in frustration. "What rotten luck! One storm blows us off course, and the moment we return to the trade route, we run into one of the most dangerous pirate crews in the East Blue." He muttered grimly to himself, "Damn it! The Zhizhiriel might be larger than their ships, but they've got 3 vessels and 500 men. That bastard Brew is a savage brute and strong. I might not be able to take him down myself. Captain, what do we do? Should we fight?" "They're not going to let us go, sir. We've got no choice." "All right, everyone, get ready." Jaren drew his sword and pointed it toward the enemy ships now closing in fast. "Once they enter cannon range, open fire. Try to sink them before they get close. The rest of you prepare for close quarters combat." "Oh! Pirates!" Eridar leaned over the railing, wide-eyed with childlike excitement. "A real naval battle! This is amazing! 200 meters! Prepare to fire! 150! Ready the cannons! 150! They're almost on us!" The lookout called out the distances, voice tight with tension. The rest of the crew moved in anxious silence, sweat dripping from their brows. "Target in range! Open fire!" Boom! 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 Both sides opened fire at once, heavy cannon blasts echoing across the waves as smoking black shells flew through the air. Most shots missed, crashing into the sea with thunderous splashes. Boom! One cannonball struck the second deck of the Zhizhiriel, tearing through a wall and leaving behind a smoldering hole surrounded by splintered wood. "We've been hit. No critical damage," the lookout called out, eyes darting to the smoking impact site. The exchange of cannon fire raged on. The Zhizhiriel boasted 8 24-pounder cannons, 4 on the main deck, 4 more in the lower gun deck. Its firepower was formidable. The Brew pirates' 3 ships had a total of 13 cannons between them, 5 24-pounders and 8 18-pounders. More guns, but individually weaker. In terms of sheer firepower, they were evenly matched. As the battle dragged on, the enemy ships crept closer. Cannon blasts rocked the sea, waves crashing against the hulls. The deck grew slick with seawater, spraying high with every near miss. Boom! "Damn it, I hate seawater," Eridar growled, dodging geysers of spray and cannonballs alike. He raised one hand and with a sharp downward strike, sent a blade of force slicing through the air, exploding a cannonball mid-flight. The Zhizhiriel took a beating. 9 cannonballs and 3 chain shots struck the decks, snapping a secondary mast. 7 more cannonballs slammed into the hull, opening 2 leaks. 11 crewmen were dead, 8 severely wounded, and 6 more lightly injured. "We're within 200 meters. Jaren shouted. "Prepare for boarding." "Heh, come on then. I can barely contain myself," Eridar muttered, not at all disturbed by the bloodshed. If anything, his eyes shimmered with eerie excitement, dark pupils tinged with a gleam of crimson, like something feral had awakened inside him. Jaren didn't seem to notice. "Eridar, I hope you'll lend a hand." "Of course. We're in range." With a wicked grin, Eridar pushed aside a crewman blocking his path, then suddenly leapt into the air. "What the hell's he doing?" Jaren blinked, stunned as the boy soared skyward. Rankyakuhan style, palm shock slash. With a sharp breath, Eridar raised his arm, fingers pressed tightly together, and swung it down in a clean arc. Slash! A 1-meter-tall blade of blue-white energy burst from his palm, cutting across the ocean like a guillotine. Shank! And cleaved the mainmast of the enemy's leftmost ship clean in half, as though slicing through tofu. What the hell was that? Damn it! The mainmast's down. Raise the auxiliary sails now. We've gotta move. We're sitting ducks like this. Panic broke out aboard the enemy ship as it coasted a few dozen meters forward, then stalled, dead in the water. What was that attack? He cut the mast down from 150 meters away with his bare hand. Is he even human? Unreal, is that the power of a devil fruit? Back on the Zhizhiriel, the stunned crew gaped in disbelief. Ha! That was incredible. Jaren beamed as Eridar landed back on the deck. You pulled off a ranged slash without a sword. That's no ordinary power. He'd seen powerful swordsmen unleash flying slashes before, sword beams, air blades, call them what you will. But those were rare, elite techniques, wielded by the strongest warriors. That Eridar could do it barehanded? Jaren was floored. 16 years old, and this strong already? Incredible. In truth, Eridar couldn't normally unleash such a slash with his hand, only with his foot. The only reason he'd pulled it off just now, was because of his impact fruit. Boom. 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 As soon as the pirate ship on the port side came to a stop at such close range, the gunners aboard the Zhizhiriel seized the opportunity. In a matter of minutes, they unleashed a fierce barrage, hammering the immobilized ship with over a dozen cannonballs, nearly sinking it on the spot. Captain, what the hell is that thing? Damn it, don't tell me it's some kind of devil fruit power. Cutting a mast that thick from this distance? That's insane. On the middle ship, pirates were screaming in panic, scrambling in every direction across the deck. Boom. One of the loudest among them, a flashy punk-styled pirate, was suddenly sent flying 6 meters back. His chest had caved in, blood gushing from his mouth. Judging by the state of him, there was no saving his life. You idiots! It's just a strong swordsman. Doesn't even have a sword, growled Captain Brew, smashing the loudest pirate's skull in with a swing of his spiked club. His hideous face was contorted with fury. Unlike these ignorant fools, Brew had seen a few things in his day. He bellowed, "You morons, he's just a brat. How strong could he possibly be? Get up there and kill him, I'll crush that little punk's skull myself. Long live the captain! Kill them all!" "Yes, Captain. Understood. We'll wipe them out. Captain, I'll be the first on board." Fired up by their captain's words, the pirates roared with renewed bloodlust. Wielding sabers, spears, and pistols, they opened fire on the Zhizhiriel, showering it with bullets and sparks. Crew members dropped under the barrage. Bang! 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 But the crew of the Zhizhiriel fought back just as viciously, gunning down waves of attackers in return. From over 100 meters away, a brutal firefight erupted. The ships rapidly closed the gap, smoke thickening in the air, the scent of gunpowder choking the decks. Bullet holes riddled every mast and railing, and blood painted the boards red. Even with the sea rocking beneath them, the short distance made it easy to aim. Casualties piled up quickly. Within moments, each side had lost over 20 men. In a flash, the distance vanished. The two ships of the Brew pirates closed in from both sides, pinning the Zhizhiriel in the middle. Less than 3 meters apart now. Hooks and grappling ropes flew out, latching onto the Zhizhiriel's railing. Pirates swarmed up with ladders or ropes, climbing under cover fire as the Zhizhiriel towered above them. Kill them! Slaughter them all! Take everything they've got! Hold them off! Feed them to the fish! Cover fire! Kill these bastards! Bang! 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 Thud! 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 Clang! 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 One side driven by greed, the other by the instinct to survive. Both fought savagely for their cause. Cannons roared. Swords clashed. Flesh tore. Limbs flew. The Zhizhiriel's deck became a slaughterhouse. Everyone had gone mad, hacking at each other like demons in hell. The color of blood, so beautiful. And the smell, intoxicating. Breathing in the metallic tang of the air, Eridar's once sunny face twisted into something deranged. His body trembled with excitement. "Ha ha ha, I'll kill you all." With a manic laugh, Eridar vanished from sight in a blur. Boom! A blonde-haired pirate had just set foot on the Zhizhiriel's deck when he felt a searing pain in his chest. Looking down, he saw a gaping 20-centimeter hole straight through him. His insides were gone. Through the wound, he could see his own ship behind him. Wah, how? Before the words could leave his mouth, he toppled backward into the sea. And he wasn't the only one. Pirates who made it onto the Zhizhiriel's deck found themselves hit by sudden gusts, glimpses of a shadow, and then holes through their chests, shattered bodies, or clean cuts that left them in 2 pieces. What the hell is that? No damn it, ugh! A demon! Get away from me! Show yourself, coward! I'll gut you! Bang! 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 Dozens dropped in an instant. Many didn't even see their killer. Panic spread like wildfire. Some pirates dropped to their knees, paralyzed with fear. Others screamed, blindly firing their weapons or swinging blades in every direction. Ha ha ha, die! Impact wave! Eridar suddenly reappeared at the prow, driving a fist toward the starboard ship. The air around him warped, exploding outward in visible shockwaves, a pale, transparent pulse rippling like a tidal wave. Terror filled the eyes of 100 pirates as the shockwave slammed into their ship. Boom! It was as if a giant's fist had punched straight through them. Wood splinters flew. A 3-meter-wide hole ripped through the deck, tearing all the way to the lower level, nearly punching through the entire ship. Over 20 pirates were instantly killed or maimed. Their weapons shattered in their hands. He's not human. How can someone like that exist? Nope. I'm going home. Screw this. He's gotta be a devil fruit user. You bastard. You actually damaged my ship. A grotesque pirate, over 2 meters tall and covered in rolls of fat, snarled from his ship's bow, eyes glinting with fear. He's that strong? That shockwave, a devil fruit ability. Captain Jaren, having just cut down an ambusher, narrowed his eyes at the lingering pulse of energy, his heart pounding. Ha ha ha! 16 million bounty head Buster Brew, Aridar cackled, pointing a finger. Captain Brew, it's an honor. I'll be borrowing your head now. Aridar had read the manga and watched the anime, so he remembered clearly, back when Luffy first set out to sea, there were only 4 pirates in the East Blue with bounties over 15 million berries. There was the Black Cat Pirates captain, Captain Kuro of 100 plans, bounty, 16 million berries. The Krieg Pirates captain, Pirate Fleet Admiral Don Krieg, bounty, 17 million berries, self-proclaimed ruler of the East Blue. The Arlong Pirates captain, Arlong the Fishman, bounty, 20 million berries, formerly a subordinate of the Warlord of the Sea, Jinbe the Knight of the Sea. And the Buggy Pirates captain, Buggy the Clown, bounty, 15 million berries, former member of the Roger Pirates and a user of the Chop Chop fruit. As for this head Buster Brew, he never appeared in the original story. Either he was taken down by the Marines or another pirate crew somewhere along the way, or he's still alive, robbing people in some remote corner of the world. But a pirate so insignificant he didn't even warrant a background cameo in the original? Naturally, Aridar didn't give him a second thought. Boom! Hey punk, don't get cocky! I'll smash your damn skull in! Brew roared, slamming his spiked mace into the ship's bow with a crash, splintering the wooden deck and leaving a deep dent. Ha ha ha! I'm gonna kill you! Soru! Aridar let out a twisted laugh and vanished in an instant. Damn it, where'd he go? Brew's eyes darted around as he gripped his mace, clearly panicking. Shit, is this another devil fruit power? Suddenly, a slightly shorter figure appeared behind him, throwing a punch aimed squarely at Brew's back. There you are! Gotcha! Brew's expression, once flustered, twisted into a sinister grin. Without even turning his head, he swung his spiked mace behind him in a wide arc. Crap! Aridar's heart tightened. He sensed something. A flash of intuition shot through his mind and without hesitation, he pulled his fist back and disappeared again. Boom! Dot! Dust exploded, wood shards flew everywhere. A gaping hole was left in the deck where Brew had struck, its jagged edges radiating outward like cracks from a hammer blow. That impact was pure brute force. TCH little bug got away, Brew muttered, yanking his mace free. His ugly face twisted in frustration and faint surprise. What the hell just happened? Captain Girly Jaren stood at the bow of the Zhiriel, watching the clash in disbelief. He'd clearly underestimated both of them. How had Brew known someone was behind him without even looking? And how did Aridar manage to dodge a surprise counterattack? Whoosh! Aridar reappeared on the deck beneath the mainmast, staring up at the towering Brew, visibly stunned. You ugly bastard! You've mastered observation haki! That was it! That was how Brew managed to react the moment Aridar appeared behind him. He had sensed Aridar's movement with observation haki and struck without even needing to see. Fortunately, Aridar had his own observation haki too, just strong enough to pick up on Brew's incoming swing in time and evade. Huh? Observation haki? Brew blinked down at him, confused. What are you even talking about? But Brew had caught on to one thing, Aridar had the same uncanny sensory ability he did. That was surprising. You've got that power too. So you really didn't know, Aridar muttered, realization dawning. Looks like you awakened it by accident. Still, you've got a surprising knack for it. You have the same power as me. This is the first time I've seen it in the East Blue. You're saying it's called observation haki? Brew was intrigued. His ability had manifested 2 years ago during a life-or-death fight where a marine captain nearly killed him. He'd awakened it on instinct and used it to pull off a counter-kill. A big chunk of his 16 million berry bounty came from that very ability. The rest of the pirates had stopped fighting, watching nervously as the eerie calm between Aridar and Brew stretched on. Even the crew of the Zhiriel couldn't help but breathe a little easier. Honestly, it's a waste of your talent. You should be in the Grand Line by now. Instead, you're just an ignorant fool. Aridar scoffed with a smirk. You little! Brew growled, his rage boiling. You want answers? Fine, I'll explain. Aridar spoke calmly, cutting through Brew's fury. Haki is split into 3 types. Observation haki is one of them. Every living being gives off a unique presence, a sound, if you will. With training, you can hear that sound and sense your opponent's next move, even their location. Observation haki heightens your senses, lets you perceive the presence and emotions of others, and even foresee danger. It's a power used by the strong in the Grand Line to deal with devil fruit users. And haki isn't some mystical gift, it's a latent power that lives inside all humans. Most people never awaken it, never even realize it exists. But you awakened yours without any training. Haki, hi. I think I've heard that word before. Captain Jaren frowned in thought. As a senior member of the Red Clover Merchant Guild, it rang a bell. A power used to counter devil fruit users, and that's just one type of haki. Dimitri murmured from the sidelines, stunned. The Grand Line really is something else. So that's what it is. A power to deal with devil fruit users, Brew muttered, suddenly enlightened. He stared at Aridar with a chilling smirk. Ha ha ha. You're a devil fruit user, aren't you? Idiot. Aridar scoffed. He immediately understood what Brew was getting at, and dismissed it with disdain. You think that level of observation haki is enough to beat me? Well, there's only one way to find out, Brew sneered. This power was made to take on freaks like you. The one thing he'd clung to was that line, haki is a power used by the strong to counter devil fruit users. That was all the justification he needed. Swollen with pride and foolish confidence, he launched himself from the ship's bow. Thud. With his massive mace raised high, Brew charged toward Aridar, every footstep pounding against the deck like a war drum. Humph. Blinded by arrogance, you can't even see the vast gulf in power between us. What a waste of talent. Against me, you're completely outmatched. With a cold snort, Aridar let out a thunderous roar and charged forward as well. The two were less than 30 meters apart, barely a blink, and they clashed. Keh. Consider this my thanks for enlightening me, now die. Brew let out a crazed screech as he raised his massive spiked club high overhead and brought it crashing down toward Aridar. Forged entirely from solid steel, the weapon weighed at least 100 pounds. It ripped through the air with a howl, descending with devastating force straight toward Aridar's head, as if it intended to pulp it into mush. Aridar could clearly sense the terrifying power behind the blow. The club's numerous steel spikes would shred him in an instant if he tried to block it barehanded, and without armament, haki, or a weapon, there was no way he could take it head-on. If only I knew Tekai, he thought. But for now, I have to evade. Soru. With a flick of his foot, Aridar vanished from sight. Boom. The spiked club smashed into the wooden deck, missing its target. The impact struck with such brutal force that it drove a crater into the nearly 30-centimeter thick ironwood boards, cracks radiating outward. The blow even revealed the layer below the deck. Impressive brute strength, Aridar mused. He reappeared 10 meters away, balanced atop the starboard railing. In one fluid motion, he raised his right leg and launched a kick into the air. It was faster than the eye could follow, and as he struck, the muscles in his leg contracted sharply, unleashing a burst of kinetic force. What the? Brew spun around in alarm just in time to see a blue-white crescent slash through the air toward him. Rokugan, no. That's Rankyaku. Indeed. It was one of the 6 powers, the foot technique known as Rankyaku, a vacuum blade kick, not just raw impact. It wasn't meant to merely hurt, it could cleave through enemies like a sword. SSSHHH. The air blade carved through the deck, slicing a deep, 2 to 3 meter rift into the timber as if it were paper. Brew narrowly rolled aside, cold sweat pouring down his face. He had let go of his heavy club just in time, executing a desperate tumble to dodge the deadly arc of the Rankyaku. Ha ha ha. Just barely dodged it, hi. Aridar sneered, twisted smile on his face, eyes gleaming with disdain. What the hell was that? For a second, I couldn't sense him at all. Brew staggered to his feet, drenched in sweat and visibly shaken. His observation haki had failed him, and he didn't understand why. Ha ha ha. You're wondering why you couldn't sense me just now, aren't you? Aridar's voice cracked into a maniacal laugh, his face twitching in deranged glee. Your observation haki is too weak. I used mine to disrupt yours in that moment. That's why you didn't sense a thing. Ha 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 ha. Pathetic. Something's not right with him. Captain Jaren, watching from the deck of the Zhizhiriel, frowned as he stared at the deranged Aridar on the Bruise ship. This wasn't the cheerful, optimistic, and goofy Aridar he'd welcomed aboard. No, this was someone else, someone darker. Aridar. Dimitri watched nervously from afar, worry edged across his face. This is impossible. Brew shouted in disbelief, face twisted in fury as he charged again, fists swinging like wrecking balls. Moron. Idiot. Fool. You can't beat me, ha ha ha. Aridar leapt from the railing, body low to the ground like a prowling predator. He dashed forward in near silence, his movement fluid and predatory, like a panther mid-hunt. In the East Blue, both men were considered top fighters. But in just a blink, they were face to face again. Die! Brew roared, his massive, iron-like fist nearly the size of a cooking pot whistling through the air toward Aridar's head, a surge of pressure trailing behind it. Ha ha ha. Aridar's twisted grin remained. Without flinching, he clenched his pale fist, muscles surging with restrained force, and launched a punch of his own. A sharp gust of wind erupted from the impact zone, scattering loose objects across the deck. Hand-style palm shock punch. On one side, Bru's enormous, black fist. On the other, Eridar's slender, white-knuckled strike. A clear mismatch in size and mass. The onlookers held their breath. Boom! A heavy, muffled thud echoed. Crack! Followed instantly by the sharp snap of breaking bone. Before the stunned eyes of every pirate and crew member watching, Bru's towering frame over 2.2 meters tall shuddered, then flew backward as if struck by a cannonball. He sailed 5 or 6 meters before crashing to the deck with a thunderous crack, the planks beneath him fracturing like glass. Splat blood gushed from his mouth, splattering across the wood and dripping down into the lower deck. His right arm twisted at an unnatural angle, bones visibly shattered and blood vessels ruptured his arm, a pulpy, mangled mess. Eridar had used his momentum, his body's full weight behind his fist, and then enhanced the strike with the impact fruit's power. The result, a devastating punch that shattered Bru's arm from within and rattled his internal organs. Captain! Captain Bru! No way! He can't lose, he can't lose! It's black magic! That has to be it! He's a devil fruit user! A monster! Bru had a 16 million bounty! Am I dreaming? Panic erupted among the crew. Some pirates began to cry. Others went mad, smashing their heads against the walls. Some simply collapsed in shock. But not one dared attack Eridar. Pathetic. Trash without a shred of challenge. Die. Eridar's bloodlust surged as he looked down at his fallen opponent. Veins bulged across his forehead as a wave of fury boiled up inside him. He drew back his fist, tightening it until his knuckles widened. Muscles bulged as power condensed. Maximum ring impact wave. Chapter 14-14, Bloodlust Syndrome. Whoosh. The air within a 10-meter radius suddenly whipped into chaos, a howling wind erupting on the spot. Before them, a pale, nearly transparent beam of light about 5 meters thick materialized in midair, as if night's glow had solidified. The air itself had taken physical form. No, don't kill me! Bru, collapsed weakly on the ground, stared with bulging eyes. His twisted face contorted in abject terror. But it was already too late. Boom! The blast sounded like a thunderclap. That terrifying white beam tore through everything ahead like a force of nature. The 7 or 8 pirates standing at the bow were engulfed in light, their bodies crushed as if struck by sledgehammers. Bones shattered, blood burst from their mouths and they died instantly. The bow of the Bru was blown clean through, leaving a gaping hole so massive it nearly severed the ship from stem to stern. What kind of power is this? Is this really something a human can do? A young crewman fell to the deck, paralyzed with fear. No way! This is insane! Even Ao, the usually quiet second mate, was slack-jawed in disbelief. Our ship! A burly, bearded pirate looked mournfully at the heavily damaged Bru. No! The captain! How did it come to this? Another pirate cried out. What was supposed to be just a routine raid had spiraled into a massacre. Not even their worst encounters with the Marines had ended like this. And now, their captain was dead. We're one of the biggest pirate crews in the East Blue. How the hell did some teenage brat do this to us? A sleazy-looking pirate with a flamboyant hairdo was practically hysterical. He had been standing just feet from the gaping hole in the bow. One step closer and he'd be dead too. He. Eridar suddenly turned his head, completely ignoring the sinking Bru beneath his feet. He grinned maniacally at the other pirates, like a madman. Without a moment's hesitation, he drove his fist toward the largest cluster of enemies. You scums! Die! Hoom! Another shockwave exploded from his fist. Boom! Dozens of meters away, pirates were hit full force by the invisible blast. Blood gushed from their mouths, their bodies crumpling as if struck by a giant hammer. Even the deck beneath them splintered into a web of cracks. Soru! Eridar vanished from sight in an instant. A moment later, a shadow emerged in the center of the pirate horde. A storm of violence followed. Limbs shattered, bones snapped, dozens of pirates collapsed to the floor in a blood-soaked heap. Jeppo! Kicking through the air in rapid succession, Eridar launched himself skyward and soared toward another pirate ship. Rankyaku Blade Frenzy! His legs sliced the air so fast they became after-images. A dozen or more blue-white crescent blades rained down like falling moons. Shik. Aik. Nu. Damn it! On the deck of the second ship, over 10 pirates screamed as they were struck. Deep gashes carved down to the bone. Some lost arms. Others, legs. Then Eridar landed on the deck with a thud. No pause, no mercy. He threw another punch. Another shockwave blasted forward, tearing a path through the crowd over 10 meters long. Nearly 20 pirates were left either dead or writhing in agony. Even the gentlest of souls hide a savage joy when blood is spilled, don't they? Captain Jaren narrowed his eyes, watching Eridar turn the pirate ship into a slaughterhouse. The boy's face was twisted, half maniacal, half serene. That laugh, those eyes, it was like something inside him had snapped. At that age, to have such monstrous power, Jaren muttered, frowning so deeply it etched on his brow. But if he came from Kuko's island, I guess it's not too surprising. Maybe that dual nature, this madness, is a result of the brutal survival pressure on that island. By now, the rest of the Gijariel's crew had snapped out of their shock and were pushing back the boarding pirates. With their captain dead, enemy morale collapsed. Most of them scrambled to flee, some even leapt into the sea. Captain, what's wrong with Eridar? Dimitri ran to Jaren's side, staring nervously at the blood-covered boy wreaking havoc across the enemy ship. Probably, it's from surviving on Kuko's island since he was a child. That place twists people. The pressure warps you. He must have bottled it up, but once he sees blood, it all comes flooding out. It's probably bloodlust syndrome, Jaren answered, eyes sharp. He seemed to have pieced it together. But it's all right. He's only killing pirates. He's still in control, he knows who the enemy is. Bloodlust syndrome. Dimitri echoed, half understanding, gaze never leaving Eridar. He clutched the beast-tooth dagger at his side so tightly his knuckles went white, fearful he'd lose control. As time passed, the battle neared its end. Most pirates from the two enemy ships had been annihilated. Only one ship, its mainmast sheared off by Eridar, managed to limp away. Its hull had taken over 10 cannon hits and a direct shockwave blast. It wouldn't get far. Likely, it would sink before nightfall. Dusk fell, bringing the battle to a close. The sea was strewn with corpses. Blood painted the waters red. Splinters of wreckage floated everywhere. One ship had already sunk, leaving a deep whirlpool. Another barely clung to the surface, falling apart at the seams. On the Gijariel, the surviving crew members were already at work gathering loot, tending to the wounded, and clearing bodies. The corpses of enemy pirates were dumped into the sea. Fallen comrades were laid carefully on the deck, white sheets drawn over them with reverence. At the bow of the Gijariel. Hey, take it easy, my ship's not made of iron, you know. Jaren glanced sideways at Eridar, who was now sitting on the deck. Huff. 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 Eridar was covered in blood, panting heavily. Half of his face was twisted in a crazed grin, the other half was eerily calm. His eyes flickered bloodthirsty one moment, cold the next. I'm trying, Eridar muttered, clearly uninterested in small talk. He shut his eyes, forcing himself to breathe evenly, trying to regain control. Hey man, chill out, Dimitri chimed in, forcing a grin. Come on, the world's not that bad. Right. A world full of pirates and blood, real paradise, Eridar deadpanned, cutting him off. Dimitri faltered, unable to argue. Well, I guess paradise is not exactly heaven. Chapter 15-15, Objective. After a long stretch of silent meditation, Eridar finally found his calm. Oi, what the hell happened to you? You look like a wreck. Captain Jaren, his face streaked with blood, strolled over while barking orders at the remaining crew. With a bottle of booze in hand, he leaned against the ship's mast and gave Eridar a sidelong glance, lips curled in a smirk. Old problem, Eridar replied flatly, shaking his head. Today's fight just triggered it, got a little intense. Bloodlust syndrome, Jaren muttered, his tone heavy. Once blood is drawn, it's like a switch flips. Even the calmest man can lose control. Crave it. Some even start drinking it. He eyed Eridar warily, no telling when the guy might snap again. Drinking blood? What am I, a vampire? Eridar frowned. He knew the condition had started back on Kuko's island, where he'd endured it for a while and thought he'd gotten it under control. Clearly, it went deeper. How do you know so much about it? Seen it before, Jaren replied, swigging from his bottle. And I know you've been suppressing it. But that's not a cure. The more you repress it, the harder it rebounds. Bloodlust syndrome needs to be guided, not sealed away. Guided how? Eridar asked, suddenly serious. By cultivating the mind, Jaren said, turning his back. Stay centered at all times. It's the slowest method, and the dumbest, but it works. He took another gulp, then added, a head monk told me that once. Captain, was it Master Shinjin from Mayuya Temple? Dimitri asked curiously, glancing up from coiling some rope. Jaren didn't answer, just nodded and took another swig. Cultivate the mind, huh? Eridar repeated the phrase under his breath, chewing on its meaning. Back on Earth, there was this school of thought that was prevalent in Wuxia and Xiangxia web novels, Daoism. Though often blended with Buddhist ideas, especially when it came to things like mindfulness and cultivating inner peace, his real understanding hadn't come from scripture. It came from those stories where once a martial artist reached the pinnacle of strength, they'd retreat from the world, becoming masters not just of the blade, but of the heart. Some were stoic. Others, boisterous. Some, downright sinister or underhanded. But they all had one thing in common, complete, unwavering clarity about their path. Nothing external could shake them. Even in the world of One Piece, the greatest warriors all bore unshakable convictions. Whitebeard his boundless heart and indomitable might. He'd never let anyone hurt his sons. Never allowed betrayal between crewmates. His ship wasn't a vessel, it was a family. Or Sakazuki Admiral Akainu. Brutal. Rigid. A zealot for absolute justice. To him, there was no compromise with evil. He'd eliminate anything, even civilians or comrades, if it meant upholding the honor of the Marines. Many hated him, but Eridar had to admit. There's a raging tiger in his soul, yet he still stops to smell the roses. Then there was Shanks. Laid back, charismatic, and always smiling. Never the type to fuss over appearances. But he valued friendship above all. Cross that line, and he'd come down like thunder. Losing an arm hadn't even fazed him. That kind of strength, it wasn't just power. It was spirit. Even in those Wuxia and Xiangxia novels, many high-level monks and Daoist masters eventually secluded themselves, living like wandering sages, one with the mountains and sky. That part, Eridar resonated with deeply. In Dao, all things return to nature. The world flows from that source. But then a wave of confusion hit him. He hadn't chosen this world. He'd been thrown into it, abandoned on Kuko's island, where he survived for 10 grueling years, hunted by beasts that viewed him as nothing more than meat. He wasn't some elite businessman. Not a special forces operative. Not an assassin. Just a broke, ordinary shut-in. A total nobody. But he'd endured. Barely. 10 years. Alone. Any normal person would have gone mad in half that time. This wasn't some video game survival sim. This was real. Each day, Eridar fought only to stay alive. He never dared think beyond survival. Sure, sometimes he fantasized about becoming a Yonko like Whitebeard or Shanks, reshaping the age, but those were just empty dreams. He never truly planned for a future. That's why, when he and Dimitri talked about dreams, he only asked about Dimitri's and never shared his own, because even he had only the faintest idea of what his dream was, and no real plan for how to reach it. Jaren and Dimitri must have noticed. They quietly stepped away, letting him think. Ha! Eridar let out a hollow laugh. Didn't I just say that people with no dreams are no better than dead fish? And yet, look at me now, flopping like a damn sardine. He sighed, the waves lapping gently beside the hull. Going out to sea was the right move. But why? Just to be another pirate? Am I after the One Piece? Do I want to become Pirate King? Or maybe I want to bring down the world government? Spark a revolution? He shot down each thought as fast as it surfaced. No. None of those fit. I'm not that kind of person. So what was he after? He looked back on his old life. Endless school days. Then, endless work. Always under someone else's thumb, parents, teachers, managers. Every step controlled. Say the wrong thing, offend the wrong person, you're out. Smile, flatter, drink when they drink. Day after day, the same grind. Same stress. A measly paycheck that couldn't even compare to what the rich spent on a single meal. Those guys snapped their fingers, and women came running. You? Even if you moved mountains for her, she might still ghost you. No connections? No power? Then no matter how talented you were, you'd be buried by the crowd. But here? In this world? Strength was everything. If you had power, you had freedom. Power meant respect. Wealth. Desire. Control. People would beg you. Fear you. Yield to you. No one could dictate your life. And then, the idea struck him. Like lightning. The 7 warlords of the sea. He remembered now, it was around this time, wasn't it? When they were just being established. A grin slowly curled across his lips. He'd found it. His goal. Yes, that's right. The 7 warlords of the sea. They are the 7 infamous pirates officially sanctioned by the world government, wielding devastating power on par with entire nations. Only those with overwhelming strength or notorious fame can be considered for such a title. The warlords are a dangerously autonomous force that possesses both freedom and status. Though officially labeled as neutral, both the Marines and pirates alike treat them as enemies. Each warlord operates independently. Though the public calls them the government's lapdogs, the reality is far more complicated. If the world government ever sees an opportunity, it won't hesitate to eliminate them. Every warlord has their own reason for accepting the title. They cling to the privileges it brings, manipulating the system while simultaneously being feared by pirates everywhere. They hold in their hands everything ordinary people could only dream of: freedom, status, power. And isn't that exactly what Eridar has always longed for? I don't care about some grand treasure, or becoming Pirate King, or stirring up revolutions, or uncovering the true history. I just want to build my own power base, watch the chaos unfold, observe the arrival of a new era, and maybe stir the pot every now and then. If I can, I wouldn't mind learning more about the poneglyphs. After all, in middle school, history and literature were the only subjects that ever held my interest. And clashing with those powerful figures who rule the seas, what could be more thrilling? Isn't that right? Het. The Seven Warlords of the Sea, a power that grants both freedom and recognition. That'll be my target, my dream. Eridar grinned, his eyes gleaming. Fujitora, didn't you want to abolish the warlord system? Let's settle this impact fruit versus press fruit, he he he. Now with his goal in sight, Eridar's spirit was reignited. He stood up, facing the sea, mind racing. It's the sea circle calendar year 1510. The warlords haven't all been chosen yet. As for the Yonko, it's unclear if they even exist at this point. The original manga doesn't say. But going by canon, Luffy met red-haired Shanks when he was 7, that's in 1512. That's when Shanks lost his arm to the Sea King and returned to the New World, shocking the world. That wouldn't have happened unless he was already a Yonko by then. So, the rise of the four emperors must have taken place between 1510 and 1512. At that moment, several strange birds flew overhead, each carrying a bag. They were news-ku. What's going on? That many news-ku flying together, something big must have happened. Spotting the flock, Captain Jaren quickly called one down, paid 100 berries, and received the latest paper. Captain Jaren, is there anything interesting? Curious, Eridar leapt down from the bow and hurried over. Having been isolated for so long, he was eager for news. No way. Jaren's eyes widened in shock as he scanned the headlines. A battle just broke out in the New World between the infamous pirates Gecko Moria and Kaido of the Beasts. What? Eridar's heart skipped a beat as he read further. An intense battle erupted between Kaido of the Beasts and Gecko Moria. Moria suffered a crushing defeat. His entire crew was annihilated, leaving only the captain himself. He fled the New World and has since disappeared. 320 million berry bounty, and even he got wiped out. Jaren muttered, astonished. For someone as notorious as Gecko Moria to be completely devastated, it's unbelievable. This era was nothing like the one Luffy and Ace would later rise in. A bounty over 100 million marked someone as a true power in the New World. Why else would Crocodile, with his 81 million bounty, or Boa Hancock, who debuted with 80 million, be chosen as warlords? Especially pirates like Moria and Doflamingo, who carried bounties in the high hundreds of millions. They were few and far between in this time. That's why, even in the far-off East Blue, Jaren was so shocked. Eridar stared silently at the newspaper in Jaren's hands, his thoughts racing. Moria's defeat. That means the era of the Yonko is about to begin. The seven warlords will soon be assembled as well. Heh. Eridar turned toward the horizon, his voice rising with excitement. The Grand Line. I'm coming for you. Night fell. Nothing eventful occurred as the Jijiriel sailed swiftly across the open sea. Under the shifting stars and rising sun, the third day arrived. By afternoon, they were just 3 nautical miles from Shiga Island. Hey, Captain Jaren, is that Shiga Island over there? Eridar asked excitedly, pointing toward a large island in the distance. Yeah, that's Shiga. One of the most famous islands in the East Blue. It's rich and rare, high-quality timber. The island spans about 320 square kilometers and houses a city of over 200,000 people. They've got a solid shipbuilding industry too, Jaren slurred slightly, sipping from his bottle. A good shipbuilding industry. Eridar's eyes sparkled. Captain Jaren, have you been here often? A couple of times. The place is a melting pot. Lowlifes, gangsters, bounty hunters, pirates, marines, you name it. There's only one dock, and it's one of the 2 busiest areas on the island, along with the city center. Jaren wiped his mouth, glancing at Eridar. Really? Eridar's dark eyes glinted with intrigue, thoughts swirling behind them. Before long, the Jijiriel pulled into port. Nice. Eridar murmured, eyes glued to the bustling harbor from where he lay sprawled across the mast. Having seen the urban spectacle of Earth, Eridar wasn't exactly amazed, but it had been 10 years since he'd seen this many people. The architecture and atmosphere were entirely different from anything on Earth. He'd only ever seen this kind of scene in manga or anime. Now, seeing it with his own eyes, he couldn't help but stare a little longer. The harbor was massive, with dozens of ships of various sizes docked, some small, just 20 to 30 meters long, others, like the Jijiriel, over 100 meters. 10 minutes later, they docked at berth 12 of the main freight terminal. The crew bustled around, unloading goods while injured sailors were carried to nearby hospitals. The place was packed, cargo everywhere, people shouting, trading, moving. Kid, we'll be staying here for 2 days, Jaren said seriously as they stood on the pier. If you don't want to hang around, just be back within 2 days. Yeah, Eridar, if it gets too much for you, you can always come with us, added the burly first mate, Hilary. We'd really welcome that, said Dmitri with a reluctant smile. Haha. Thanks for everything, really, but there's no need, Aridar laughed loudly, then turned serious. Dmitri, if you've made up your mind 4 years from today, I'll be waiting for you here. We'll set sail together. I'm off. Step, step, step. With that, Aridar turned and walked away, waving with his back to them, his beast hide pack slung over one shoulder as his footsteps echoed down the dock. One day, the seas will know his name, Captain Jaren said, taking a swig of his drink, his gaze sharp and serious. 4 years from today. Dmitri whispered, eyes fixed on Aridar's fading silhouette. His expression slowly hardened with determination. Come on, Dmitri. Let's head back. Captain Jaren clapped a hand on the boy's bony shoulder with a smile. Starting tomorrow, I'll be teaching you how to navigate. Captain. Dmitri paused then broke into a wide, genuine grin. See Circle Calendar, June 18, 1512. East Blue, southeast shore of Shiga Island. Coconut palms swayed gently over the sun-bleached sands, the luxurious villa nestled behind the treeline looking out over the crystalline sea. Beneath the shade of a coconut tree, a teenage boy lounged on a beach chair. He wore oversized sunglasses, flared pants, and nothing on his upper body. A lazy smile curled on his lips as he watched a group of bikini-clad women laughing and playing in the surf. He didn't look that old, but the lean, honed muscle sculpting his body spoke of brutal discipline and hard-won strength. Scars slashed across his chest and abdomen, long and jagged, evidence of past battles so fierce they'd leave most men dead or broken. Just then, a burly man in a sharp black suit came sprinting across the beach, dress shoes slipping slightly in the sand. A long scar ran down his cheek, and he clutched a rolled-up newspaper in one hand. Boss. We've got a situation. Big Cat just hit several of our places on Center Street, the man panted, respect and tension in his voice as he stopped before the teen. Ah, it's you, Gorbo. You bring my paper. The boy tilted his head slightly, lowering his shades to reveal a surprisingly ordinary but radiantly confident face. Yes, sir. Today's edition. Gorbo bowed slightly as he offered the paper with both hands. Talk to me. Details, the boy said, flipping the paper open casually. Yes, sir. Just got word from Center Street. Big Cat Sam's took his crew and wrecked one of our casinos and 2 bars over on East Street. They also trashed 4 inns and 2 restaurants we protect. Gorbo's voice was calm and measured, but his eyes burned with fury. Big Cat Sam's. The boy furrowed his brow in thought before realization struck. That the same loser I kicked out to West Street a year and a half ago. That's him, Gorbo confirmed with a nod. How the hell did that coward grow a spine? He couldn't even fight back when I crushed his whole gang and sent him packing like a mutt. The teen's brows arched in disbelief. Any idea how many guys he brought? Same bunch as before, more or less. But a few unfamiliar faces showed up and those ones fought like hell. Our 50 men took heavy damage. Some dead. If Oliver hadn't been off in Logetown buying swords, they wouldn't have made it past the first place, Gorbo spat, barely suppressing his rage. Heh, so he's got backing now. The boy's voice turned cold, contempt dripping from his words. No way any gang on Shiga Island would dare touch us otherwise. He stood up from the lounge chair, brushing sand from his legs. Take your men and head there first. I'll catch up after I change. Yes, boss. Gorbo bowed again before turning to leave. He knew better than anyone, their young leader didn't just look strong, he was the strongest man on all of Shiga Island. 2 years ago, this boy had arrived alone, and by sheer force alone, had taken over the island's criminal underworld. Anyone who had dared challenge him had ended up in a pool of their own blood. Now, the once laughingstock island punk had claimed the wealthiest zone's Center Street and the docks for himself. Over 200 formal members answered to him. Including affiliates and hangers-on, his power base numbered over 500. In Shiga Island's underground world, one name now ruled all. Chris T. Aridar. Aridar ambled through the forest, scratching his head lazily as he schemed the newspaper. The front page was nearly half covered by a photo, 7 figures, each distinct, some tall, others short, some lean, others burly. There were men and women, one man with hawk-like eyes and a sword, another built like a fish man. Among them, one woman stood out with stunning beauty. The background, a massive fortress emblazoned with the bold, unmistakable insignia of the Marines, a seagull crest above the word Navy. The headline read, 7 Warlords of the Sea, official members confirmed. The article went on to explain, these were 7 infamous pirates recognized by the world government, each possessing the destructive power of a natural disaster and the military might to rival a nation. The 7 Warlords of the Sea were a legalized faction of pirates granted status and power by the government to counterbalance other threats on the seas. With their induction, their former bounties had been frozen, and all previous crimes were pardoned. Though technically still pirates, they were allowed to plunder as they pleased so long as they paid tribute when caught and responded to government summons. In return for this delicate alliance, the world government would overlook many of their requests and judge them not just as criminals, but as assets, worthy of negotiation and preservation. Eridar chuckled. So the Marine HQ Marineford has finally assembled all 7 warlords. He murmured, now the Grand Line's tripartite balance begins, Navy, warlords, and the 4 emperors. A 3-way stalemate of terrifying power. He clenched the newspaper tightly, excitement rising in his chest. My blood's boiling just thinking about it, ha 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 ha. The warlords, huh? Just wait. It won't be long before my name's among them. Tossing the paper to the ground, Eridar laughed heartily as he walked out of the woods. Back at the villa, Eridar changed into a sleek black suit with the help of a few diligent maids. 2 large men in matching black suits flanked him as he strolled leisurely toward the center of town. 10 minutes later, Eridar made a flashy entrance into the main plaza of Center Street. The square was huge white marble tiles gleaming underfoot, a large fountain at the center, flower beds lining the perimeter. But no civilians were in sight. Instead, 2 opposing gangs faced off in a tense standoff. On Eridar's side, over 100 rugged men in identical black suits, pants, and shoes gripped short-handled axes and flintlock pistols. At the head stood the ever-imposing Gorbo and a tall, handsome man with striking blue hair. Opposite them was a ragtag band of 70 or so. Their clothes were mismatched and tattered, weapons ranging from clubs to old rifles. They looked like scavengers, not fighters. At the front stood a hulking brute in a filthy floral shirt, Big Cat Sam's. Boss. Eridar-sama. Morning, boss. The suited men greeted him with bowed heads and reverence. You idiots ever heard of synchronized greetings? Eridar sighed, waving a hand dismissively. Ha 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 ha. The suited men erupted in laughter at his annoyed tone. Chapter 18-18, a 20 million berry pirate. As expected, the moment Eridar appeared, the ragtag bunch opposite them started to stir uneasily. The brown-haired man leading them visibly flinched the instant he saw Eridar, a flash of fear flickering in his eyes. Oi, Arlen, you couldn't take care of them. Eridar gave the group a lazy glance, his tone light and casual. Boss, the other side's got a few serious fighters, replied Arlen, the handsome blue-haired man. He sniffled, scratched the back of his head, and looked helplessly at his boss. Really now? Eridar raised an eyebrow in surprise. He hadn't expected one of his 2 strongest subordinates to struggle like this. Arlen was no slouch, his combat skills were among the best on Shiga Island. Aside from Eridar himself, only one other subordinate could barely manage to hold his own against him. Everyone else didn't even come close. TCH. So you finally showed yourself, Eridar. I thought you were hiding like a coward, the brown-haired man sneered, trying to recover from his earlier embarrassment with a twisted grin. Eridar cast a disdainful glance his way, casually hooking his index finger with his thumb resting on top, and said, Big Cat Sam's, who the hell gave a weakling like you the balls to stand in front of me? Have you already forgotten what I'm capable of? The moment Sams saw the motion of Eridar's fingers, his face went pale. He stumbled back a few steps, as if recalling something truly horrifying. Smack! A thunderous slap sent Sams crashing to the ground. A vivid handprint swelled across his right cheek, already turning red and puffy. Useless shit! A tall, well-built man with white hair lowered his hand. He stared coldly at Sams, his voice sharp and unforgiving. The white-haired man stood close to 2 meters tall, his expression vicious and menacing. A cross-shaped scar ran down the left side of his face. His slicked-back white hair and open-chested white and gold coat gave off an imposing air. A white katana hung at his waist, his baggy pants cinched with a black belt, and he wore high-top round-toed shoes. Sorry. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Sams clutched his swollen cheek, bowing repeatedly as he scrambled to his feet, face contorted in a pathetic grimace. Well, so you're the one pulling the strings behind all this. Eridar eyed the white-haired man, rubbing his nose. The guy seemed familiar somehow, but the memory just wouldn't click. Didn't expect the boss of the biggest gang on Shiga Island to be such a kid. What do you say, want to join me? The white-haired man asked, amused. He had known the top gang leader on the island was young, but this kid looked like he'd just come of age. Oi, white hair, are you underestimating me? Eridar said, annoyed, his expression darkening. Ha. Of course not. That blue-haired guy of yours is already stronger than anyone on my crew besides my first mate, the white-haired man said with a laugh, rubbing the hilt of his katana. Seriously though, you should come with me. Let's hit the Grand Line together. He. So you're a pirate, huh? Eridar's eyes lit up in realization. He burst out laughing. So this guy was in the same business. Eridar wasn't a pirate yet, but he was already prepared to take that step. Oi, no way. That's why you looked familiar. Arlen suddenly gasped, sweat beading on his forehead. Tugging at his short blue hair, his voice trembled, "You're that rising star of the East Blue, the one with a 20 million berry bounty, the captain of the White Mane Pirates, White Mane Swordsman Enrod." "Oh, so it was you," Aridar said, finally recognizing him. Just a few days ago, he had seen Enrod's latest bounty poster, "Wanted, dead or alive, White Mane Swordsman Enrod. Accused of killing 164 Marines stationed across various islands. Extremely dangerous. Bounty, 20 million berries." Hiss. Gasps swept through Aridar's crew. They dealt with pirates before plenty, in fact, but usually low-tier ones with bounties in the tens or hundreds of thousands. This was the first time they'd encountered a pirate with a 20 million berry bounty. And judging by the wanted poster, Enrod wasn't just dangerous, he was infamous. Ahaha. "So you're the new East Blue hotshot with the 20 million berry bounty, White Mane Swordsman Enrod, huh?" Aridar emphasized the words hotshot, his tone sharp. "You heard my subordinates. What do you want? Don't tell me you're here to give me some half-assed recruitment speech." Truthfully, with his knowledge of how things would unfold in the future, Aridar never considered anyone with a bounty under 100 million berry worthy of the title Great Pirate. In this era, even 80 million berry barely made the cut. Still, this was the East Blue, the weakest of all the seas. Here, even the Grand Line was spoken of like a legend. So a 20 million berry bounty did just barely qualify as a big deal. "Ha ha ha! You're a blunt one, kid," Enrod chuckled. He didn't take offense at the tone. But his fingers were tapping rhythmically against his katana's hilt. Then his smile vanished. Expression cold and flat, Enrod said, "I know you've cornered the market on the finest lumber on Shiga Island. My ship took heavy damage in the last storm, and I need that top-quality wood to make repairs. Without it, there's no way we'll survive the Grand Line's waters." So that was it. Enrod's pirate ship had been badly damaged in a violent storm 2 nights ago. By chance, they'd drifted here. While scouting for supplies last night, he'd wandered into West Street Big Cat Sam's turf. Recognizing Enrod, Sam's had immediately sucked up to him, spilling everything he knew about Aridar. He'd exaggerated Aridar's strength and wealth, claiming he monopolized the island's finest wood, hoping to provoke Enrod into going after him. This was Sam's shot at revenge after Aridar had humiliated him a year ago. "Ah, that." Aridar scratched his head, pretending to be troubled. With a sly grin, he said, "Sorry about that, but I'm kinda running low myself." "Boss, are you sure?" Gorbo's face twisted around his scar. He hadn't expected such a flat-out rejection. "See, come on, boss, don't be that direct," Arlen muttered, still a little dazed. The enemy crew had given him hell earlier, and that was without the captain or first mate lifting a finger. "Is that so?" Enrod's face darkened. His cold eyes sharpened as his hand gripped the katana's hilt. "Then, go to hell." A sharp, murderous cry rang out. Shing! A piercing flash of white light suddenly sliced through the air, so sharp and dazzling that, for a moment, it was all anyone could see. Pop! The air shimmered faintly from the disturbance. Boom! The plaza erupted in an explosion. Dust billowed into the sky as a tall figure was blasted backwards, stumbling out of the smoke. Cough, cough! The towering man dropped to one knee, blood dripping from his mouth. As the smoke cleared. "What? No way! Isn't that the pirate with a 20 million bounty?" Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. The man kneeling on the ground was none other than the rising pirate from the East Blue, Enrod the White Mane Swordsman, with a bounty of 20 million berries. Cough! 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 "Who are you?" Enrod, leaning on his katana for support, stabbed the blade into the dirt. The weapon was cracked near the edge. His left hand clutched his chest as he knelt, coughing up blood, staring in disbelief. "White Mane Swordsman Enrod. Impressive title. But you're nothing more than an ignorant fool." Aridar casually retracted his right hand. A flicker of disdain curled at his lips. He hadn't even needed to go all out, this guy wasn't worth the effort. Then, with a smirk, Aridar threw a glance toward Big Cat Sam's, whose face was now flushing red with embarrassment. "Oi, Big Cat, is this the guy you were counting on? Bit weak, isn't he?" Truth be told, Enrod wasn't weak by East Blue standards. In fact, he was slightly stronger than Zoro was at his debut in the original timeline. He hadn't yet manifested sword waves with his slashes, not because he lacked the power, but simply because he hadn't realized he could. Of course, he still had a ways to go before reaching the level of cutting steel. I. Sam's trembled all over, struggling to form a full sentence. He was terrified. He never imagined Aridar would be this powerful, capable of downing a 20 million berry pirate with a single strike. It was horrifying. "Your power, is that a devil fruit ability?" Enrod asked weakly, pushing himself to stand with the help of his blade, fear and confusion written all over his face. "You know, among the 4 seas, the East Blue is called the weakest. Sure, someone like you well known and skilled here might be top tier locally. But compared to the other seas? You'd just be another decent fighter. And in the Grand Line where monsters roam and legends walk? You'd be third rate at best. Aridar idly twisted the black gemstone ring on his right index finger. He didn't bother answering Enrod's question directly. Instead, he stared him down with contempt. The truth was, Aridar feared those Grand Line monsters feared he'd be crushed by a marine admiral or one of the warlords of the sea. He wasn't about to rush in unprepared. This was real life, not a game you couldn't just power level in a vacuum. So he trained in secret, building strength behind the scenes until he could stand tall on the open sea. That's why he wasn't out there already. He was waiting for age, for readiness, for power. 20 was his threshold. Not before then. Enrod's face twisted with shame and shock. He'd always thought his strength was something to be proud of. But this defeat so sudden, so total woke him up. He realized, for the first time, just how big the world really was. The world's a big place, Captain. No shame in facing that. Just know where you stand. A heavy hand landed on Enrod's shoulder. A gaunt, dark-skinned man had appeared behind him silent and still as a shadow. Hey, hey! Who the hell is that? Isn't that Black Ghost Galen the White Mane Pirate's first mate? The guy with a 10 million bounty. Aridar pointed exaggeratedly, grinning with mock surprise. Man, your dark scared me half to death. Galen stood calm in a long black coat, chest bare like his captain's. His face was lean and sharp, exuding quiet precision. A flintlock pistol and a short, half-meter blade were strapped at his waist. Black sandals adorned his feet. Cut the act, Aridar-sama. A man like you hiding in a backwater gang instead of setting sail? You've got bigger plans, don't you? He sneered, then spoke seriously. You wouldn't be hoarding the finest timber on Shiga Island unless you were planning to build a ship. Aridar laughed a deep, echoing chuckle but his eyes grew cold. He raised his right hand again, thumb pressed atop his curled index finger like a gun. You know too much. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you for it? Afraid? Of course. If our captain can't beat you, we sure can't. Galen's honesty was blunt, without pride. Behind him, Enrod's expression darkened further, but he stayed silent, sheathing his chipped blade. Humph. Aridar smirked quietly. But if Aridar-sama knows this much about the Grand Line, Galen continued, then surely you're close to setting sail. Why not form an alliance? Everyone froze. The idea was so sudden, so shocking, that it stunned the entire crowd. Galen. Even Enrod hadn't expected his first mate to say such a thing. An alliance? Arlen and Gorbo were equally dumbfounded. Just moments ago they were trading blows, and now this? That's right, Galen said with a calm smile. Like Aridar-sama said, our captain may be nothing special in the Grand Line. But here in the East Blue? He's one of the highest bounty pirates around. A rising star. I don't think you're qualified to ally with me, Aridar said, laughing softly. But I'm curious, go on, give me your pitch. He looked amused. They didn't even realize how strong he really was. Sure, Enrod had potential, but could he compare to the supernovas? A tiger forming a pact with an ant wasn't that absurd? And even the most promising pirate would still be trash if they couldn't survive to grow. I know you're not ready to leave just yet, Aridar-sama. But if we form an alliance now, we can scout the Grand Line first using your intelligence to chart safer routes. By the time you set sail, we'll have grown stronger. And when you arrive we'll be there, ready to back you. Together, we could carve out our own dominion. Despite Aridar's condescension, Galen didn't waver. His voice was steady, his gaze sharp. Even Arlen and Gorbo seemed tempted by the vision. Chapter 20-20, Let Them Go. Ha ha ha, now that's interesting. Hey, how about joining my crew? Aridar's eyes gleamed as he chuckled lightly. He didn't answer the question, instead, he flipped it, making an offer of his own. This guy would make a decent strategist, he thought to himself. Hey, I'm still standing right here. Hearing Aridar so blatantly try to poach his man, Enrod's face darkened even more. Haha. Aridar-sama, is it really wise to say that in front of my captain? Galen's jet-black face broke into a grin, and he let out a hearty laugh before getting straight to the point. So, Aridar-sama, what do you think of my proposal? You weaklings, fine, I'll let you go since you've managed to amuse me. Aridar waved them off, utterly unconcerned. Once you set foot on the Grand Line, you'll realize how laughable your words sound today. Aridar-sama, is there something wrong with my proposal? Galen frowned in confusion. He genuinely didn't understand what was wrong with what he'd offered. Well then, Aridar said with a sigh, since you're asking, fine, I'll tell you. When you make it safely to the Sabayati archipelago and you're still worthy of being called supernova pirates, then maybe you'll qualify to talk alliances with me. He was already growing bored. The urge to kill them had waned. Supernova pirates. Enrod and Galen echoed, both seeming deep in thought. Oh, and Galen, consider this a freebie in your honor. Eridar squinted at them, something flashing in his mind. With a smile playing at his lips, he added, the Grand Line is a sea where monsters gather. 3 powers dominate it, the Marines, the 7 Warlords of the sea, and the 4 Emperors. There are plenty of monsters out there with terrifying strength. Frankly, you're too weak. And remember this, unless you've got Sea Stone and Haki, the moment you meet a Logia-type Devil Fruit user, the only thing you should do, is run. Run as far and fast as you can. The Marines I know, but, the 7 Warlords? The 4 Emperors? Enrod was baffled. Sea Stone? Haki? Logia Devil Fruit users? Galen's brow furrowed into a tight crease. He suddenly realized how little he actually knew about the Grand Line. Why do we have to run if we don't have Sea Stone or Haki? Because you can't hit them, Eridar said flatly, shooting him a glance. Can't hit them? Galen muttered, not quite getting it, but Eridar cut him off before he could press the point. That's enough. Get out of my sight before I change my mind. You. Enrod was seething, hand raised, and about to shout something, but Galen stepped in and stopped him. Captain. Let's go. Enrod glanced at his first mate. His anger cooled in an instant. He understood clearly he had no real chance against Eridar. The moment that sank in, Enrod spun around and walked off without hesitation. Thank you, Eridar-sama. We'll meet again in the Grand Line. Galen gave him a regretful look and a slight bow, then quickly followed after Enrod with the rest of their crew. Let's hope you live long enough to see that day, Eridar muttered, rolling his eyes. He didn't take the farewell seriously. Too many people wanted to be pirates in this world. People died every day. Getting captured and thrown into Impel Down could almost be considered lucky. Just surviving was already an achievement, fame was even rarer. Seeing his protector walk away, Big Cat Sam's panicked. He turned and tried to follow after Enrod, hoping to slip away with him. His crew behind him were equally terrified. When they saw their boss trying to bolt, they scrambled to follow. Oi, oi. Big Cat, who said you could leave? Eridar's voice rang out. His tone soured at the sight of Sam's trying to sneak off. He raised a finger. Impact gun. Pop. A sharp, subtle crack rang through the air. A ripple shimmered, barely visible. Aaaak! A scream erupted from one of Big Cat Sam's men. It was like he'd been shot. He collapsed instantly, a gaping, fist-sized hole blown through his back, gory and terrifying. Eridar hadn't drawn a gun. There was no gunshot, no smell of gunpowder. Yet it was like the man had been sniped clean through, not by a handgun, but something with the punch of a high-caliber rifle. More than anything, it resembled a martial artist's secret finger strike from a wuxia novel. Eridar-sama. I am sorry. Please. Spare me, I was forced into this. The sudden death triggered a memory buried in Sam's mind, one from a year and a half ago. Terror slammed into him. He fell to his knees, frantically kowtowing toward Eridar. And like dominoes toppling, the rest of Sam's men collapsed to the ground as well. The air filled with desperate, pleading voices and the sound of foreheads hitting pavement. Eridar-sama, we were forced into this. Please, treat us like farts and let us go. We had no choice. Spare us. I swear I won't ever do it again, please. Mercy, mercy. Please let us go. He. Eridar grinned as he looked over the crumpled thugs. No matter how many times he saw scenes like this, it always gave him a thrill. It was a twisted kind of satisfaction, one that made him feel good. Really good. Shut it. Trash. Then his smile vanished. His eyes went cold. He flicked his fingers 4 times. Impact gun. Pop. 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 N. Sam's barely had time to register the motion. His scream was cut short. His burly body convulsed as if struck by a warhammer. He collapsed backward with a crash, dust billowing up around him. A gaping hole, as wide as a bowl, was torn through his chest where his heart used to be. Almost simultaneously, 3 of the loudest lackeys dropped dead as well, blood blooming from wounds in their heads or hearts. Click click. Click click. The remaining thugs froze. The only sounds now were their rattling teeth. No one dared speak. They clung to the ground, paralyzed in terror. Eridar shot them a look of pure disdain, then turned away. He left behind only a single, chilling order. Break a leg. Each. Yes, boss. His crew responded at once, bowing respectfully as they watched him leave. Then they turned toward the trembling thugs, malicious smiles twisting their faces, eyes glittering with bloodlust. He.